Leaving the hotel, Michael Thompson felt somewhat dejected. He could sense that Mr. Huang had been interested in him at first, even starting to ask about his family background. Besides, Arthur Sullivan had specifically invited Mr. Huang over. It couldn't have been for nothing. But somewhere along the line, maybe something he said was wrong. Mr. Huang seemed to suddenly lose interest. Was it because of his family's modest background, or that he didn't have Boston residency? But that couldn't be it, right? This was about taking on a disciple, not marrying off a granddaughter. Michael Thompson couldn't quite figure it out. Fortunately, he'd been through a lot and had developed a thick skin. He reassured himself a bit and let it go. If he wasn't accepted, so be it. It seemed he just wasn't destined to become the disciple of a master of traditional Chinese studies. If he worked hard and got into the Rhode Island School of Design in the future, graduating from a prestigious, specialized school like that wouldn't be bad either. Mulling over these thoughts, Michael Thompson reached the ground floor lobby of the Royal Manor. Just as he was about to walk out of the hotel, Olivia Sullivan, beside him, tugged his arm. He looked at her, puzzled, only then noticing several people walking aggressively towards them from the lobby lounge area. Olivia Sullivan whispered, "That's my Uncle Victor." Indeed, it was Victor Sullivan leading the group. However, he wasn't heading for Michael Thompson and Olivia Sullivan. He walked straight past them. Olivia Sullivan had already started to raise her hand to greet him, but when she saw Victor Sullivan walk past without even a glance, she awkwardly lowered it. Michael Thompson squeezed her hand, which made her feel a little better. He glanced behind them. Violet Sullivan had been following them the whole time. Now, Victor Sullivan walked directly up to her. Victor Sullivan had a dark expression on his face and said something to Violet Sullivan, who stood with her arms crossed, watching him coolly without saying a word. "I raised you all these years, and this is the attitude I get," Victor Sullivan suddenly shouted. The lobby fell silent, and everyone couldn't help but turn to look. Muttering angrily, Victor Sullivan reached out to grab Violet Sullivan's arm and pull her outside. But Violet Sullivan, looking utterly impatient, violently shook off his arm. She muttered something, though it probably wasn't anything pleasant, because Michael Thompson noticed Victor Sullivan's expression change instantly before he swung his hand and delivered a hard slap across Violet Sullivan's face. Smack! Violet Sullivan lowered her head, her long hair hiding her face, making her expression unreadable. She just covered her cheek with her hand. Michael Thompson frowned slightly, while Olivia Sullivan clutched his arm tightly and whispered, "Don't get involved. Let's just go." Michael Thompson gestured upwards. "The old man is still upstairs eating. Should we let him know?" Olivia Sullivan's face immediately showed hesitation. The second and third branches of the Sullivan family had always been at odds. You could even say their relationship was deeply hostile. Olivia Sullivan was just part of the younger generation, and besides, she and Violet Sullivan already had a terrible relationship. Michael Thompson saw her predicament and gently patted her shoulder. "Let's go." He wasn't one to meddle in other people's business anyway, especially family matters. Olivia Sullivan nodded softly. "Okay." Michael Thompson turned and walked away, leaving through the lobby's revolving door. Behind them, the commotion in the lobby continued. After returning from Green Valley, Michael Thompson got home to find the house dark and empty. His parents weren't home today. The deal to buy the mine had been finalized, and lately, the entire Thompson family was busy with it, bidding, running around to various departments for permits and certifications, contacting mining teams, hiring workers. It was all very tedious work. With the New Year celebration just over half a month away, some things had to be settled before then, or they'd be delayed by a month or two. But the mine probably wouldn't officially start operations until May or June of next year. Michael Thompson had no intention of getting involved in all that. Things would proceed step by step as planned. He could just relax comfortably at home and wait for the day he became the son of a wealthy family. When Michael Thompson got home, there was a note left on the table for him from Margaret Thompson. "Michael, Dad and I went into the city and will probably be home very late. If you get hungry, there's stuff in the pot you can cook yourself." He chuckled to himself. Leave it to Mom to look out for her boy. He really was hungry. Even though he'd just had a lavish meal of delicacies at the Royal Manor in the city, he felt somewhat restrained at the dinner and hadn't eaten much. Now that he was home, he actually wanted something to eat. Michael Thompson went into the kitchen, happily wondering what delicious treat his dear mother had left for her precious son. But when he lifted the pot lid, all he found inside were 2 unopened packets of instant ramen, next to a sausage and an egg. Michael Thompson's mouth twitched. Well, all right then. At least it was his favorite braised beef flavor. Michael Thompson cooked the instant ramen himself, adding the sausage and egg. He also grabbed a small handful of green vegetable leaves from the fridge, cooked everything thoroughly, then put it all in a bowl and carried it to the dining table. He slurped up some noodles and nodded in satisfaction. Instant ramen definitely tastes best when you cook it properly. Braised beef flavor is the greatest. Just as he was eating, the front door by the entryway opened. Michael Thompson initially thought his parents were back, but when he looked up, he saw his uncle Robert Thompson poking his head in. "Michael, you're home." Seeing Michael Thompson was home, Robert Thompson came in cheerfully. Noticing the bowl of ramen, he said, "Just eating instant ramen? That stuff's not healthy. Come on over to my place. I'll have your aunt cook you up some turkey dinner." Michael Thompson shook his head. "No thanks, Uncle. I'm almost done anyway. Didn't you go into the city with Mom and Dad today?" "Nah, they can handle that stuff. I don't understand any of it anyway. My job is just to chip in money when needed." Robert Thompson waved his hand dismissively and sat down next to Michael Thompson. Regarding the mine, the second, third, and fourth Thompson brothers were the most involved. The eldest Thompson brother was abroad, and the fifth wasn't in this line of business either. They had their own careers. They just contributed funds to cover any gaps, essentially investing in it. Michael Thompson didn't know his eldest uncle very well, as he had settled abroad before Michael was even born. But he was very familiar with his younger uncle, Robert. In this life, Robert Thompson had pulled out of the stock market just before the crash and had made quite a bit of money. Not only had he bought out the clothing factory in the next city, but he also had enough left over to support the family. Robert Thompson hadn't just dropped by for a casual visit this time. He had come specifically to see Michael Thompson. "Nephew, that sewing machine and those embroidery hoops you asked me get, I got them for you." The sewing machine came straight from the factory. "It's in great shape, barely used." Robert Thompson asked, puzzled as he spoke, "But what do you need this stuff for? Are you planning to learn how to sew clothes or something?" He got them. Michael Thompson was thrilled. He'd only asked his uncle to look for these things a couple of days ago and hadn't expected him to find them so quickly. "It's for a school assignment," he lied casually. In reality, he was preparing Olivia Sullivan's birthday present for after the new year, the piece of clothing he had promised her. The next day, when Michael Thompson woke up, his parents had already left early. His uncle had gone into the city today, too, leaving only a few apprentices at the shop. He didn't plan on going to the shop, so after getting ready, he left home as well. While eating steamed buns at a diner, Michael Thompson pulled out his phone to check eBay. He had ordered a batch of real silk fabric and some clothing embellishments online, but they were still in transit and likely wouldn't arrive until tomorrow. He needed to be careful. The fabric was incredibly expensive per square meter. Deliveries could only be sent to the entrance of Sculpture Town, not directly to his house. The drivers just left packages in a pile outside the small supermarket, and the owner didn't keep an eye on them. If someone else took his order, he'd be absolutely furious. So, Michael Thompson planned to head over to the supermarket entrance tomorrow when the delivery was expected, wait there, and grab his packages immediately to take them home. After breakfast, Michael Thompson traveled from Pine Creek Town to Pine Ridge County. On a satellite map, Pine Ridge County looked like a narrow, flat strip of land nestled between the Green River and a rolling hills landscape. It really wasn't very big. Back in '08, it hadn't seen much development yet. Half the county seat consisted of old houses crisscrossed by numerous narrow, winding alleys that felt like mazes. Small eateries were everywhere along the roadsides. Tricycle taxi drivers waited in lines along the roadside, chatting idly with each other while waiting for fares. The place buzzed with everyday life. Michael Thompson took the bus, got off near the Green River Bridge, and, knowing the way, ducked into a small alley. There wasn't much else in this particular alley, but it had a surprising number of hair salons. Even in the cold, young women lingered in the doorways, practically calling out to passersby like, "Hey, handsome, looking for some fun?" Michael Thompson paid them no mind, bypassing the alley and turning into a construction site. He cut through it via a smaller path and arrived at his destination for the day. It was an old gold shop. This shop had a long history in Pine Ridge County. No one knew exactly how long it had been open, but supposedly, when Michael Thompson's parents got married, their traditional wedding gold had been crafted right here. Nowadays, however, young people preferred trendy jewelry stores, opting for brand-name diamond rings and platinum pieces. As a result, business at this old shop, which relied on traditional craftsmanship, had slowed considerably. Michael Thompson wasn't there to buy jewelry, though. He wanted gold ingots, and he needed one of the shop's master craftsmen to draw the gold into incredibly fine thread, so fine that 16 strands could pass through the eye of a single needle. Craftsmen capable of such delicate work were rare, so Michael Thompson had come to the old shop on the off chance they could help. Once inside, Michael Thompson explained what he needed. The young owner, who looked about 30, said he would have to ask his grandfather if the work could be done. After making a call, the owner confirmed it was possible, but warned that the labor cost would be significant. The current price for a gram of high-purity gold was 250 yuan, and the processing fee would add another 10 yuan per gram. That 10 yuan per gram might not sound like much, but Michael Thompson wasn't buying just a gram or two. He needed a full 500 grams, 1 pounds of gold. That meant the processing fee alone would cost 5,000 yuan. Still, compared to the 125,000 yuan cost of the gold itself, the 5,000 yuan processing fee didn't seem exorbitant. The total came to 130,000 yuan. Michael Thompson immediately paid a 20% deposit of 26,000 yuan by card, with no negotiation on the price. After getting the receipt and stepping out of the old gold shop, Michael Thompson stood there for a moment, marveling at how his recently boosted savings had instantly shrunk by half. Including the fabric and other costs, his total outlay was already around 150,000 to 160,000 yuan. And that was just the cost of materials. Factoring in his own labor, the final value was anybody's guess. Oh well, half of this was basically boss Olivia Sullivan's money anyway, Michael Thompson thought, quickly rationalizing the expense and not letting it bother him too much. He'd accomplished his main goal for the day. He initially thought about heading home, but realized there wasn't much waiting for him there. Instead, he decided to go hang out at Jake Wilson's family's arcade for a bit. Come to think of it, Fatty never got back to me yesterday, Michael Thompson mused. Wonder if things went well with Clare Evans. Michael Thompson recalled yesterday. While he and Olivia Sullivan were wandering through Ark Amusement Park, he hadn't been in the mood to listen to Jake Wilson potentially gloat, so he'd ignored his calls. Jake Wilson hadn't tried calling again after that. He found it a bit odd that Jake Wilson hadn't followed up. Had there been some kind of trouble? Puzzled by this, Michael Thompson abandoned the thought of going home, hailed a tricycle taxi, and headed directly to the Wilson family's arcade. When Michael Thompson reached the arcade entrance, even before stepping inside, he saw Jake Wilson hunched over on a long stone bench out front, holding a big bowl in one hand and gnawing on a tender, slow-cooked pork bone with the other. The moment Jake Wilson spotted Michael Thompson, he rolled his eyes, scowled deeply, and pointedly turned his head away as if he hadn't seen him. Michael Thompson grinned and sidled up to him. Laura Wilson make her famous pork bones? Jake Wilson's mother, Laura Wilson, wasn't originally from Green Valley. She was from the neighboring Wensher city. Michael Thompson hadn't visited Wensher often, but he knew it was famous for its delicious pig organ noodles and stewed pork bones. Growing up, he'd certainly had his share of free meals at the Wilsons' house. But as Michael reached out, presumably wanting a taste, Jake Wilson irritably slapped his hand away. Michael Thompson pointed a finger at him. Fatty, you're acting weird. Clare Evans slapped me yesterday. Jake Wilson shot back, looking thoroughly miserable. You think I should be acting normal? Michael Thompson scratched his head. Yesterday, that actually happened. That wasn't how he'd pictured things going down at all. That room in the haunted house. You set that up, didn't you? I had a feeling it was your handiwork. Whoa, calm down, man, we're friends. If you're gonna pull a prank like that, could you at least warn me first? Clare Evans thought I set it all up. Isn't that a good thing? Go my ass. Clare Evans cried. Michael Thompson tried to imagine it. It was difficult to picture a tough girl like Clare Evans crying. He asked hesitantly. Moved? Like happy tears. Half scared, half furious, Jake Wilson said, scratching his head in annoyance. He reluctantly started recounting yesterday's events. So, when Clare and I first went into that room, we looked up and saw her photo surrounded by a bunch of white candles, like a damn shrine for someone who died. It freaked us both out. Michael Thompson suddenly looked embarrassed, scratching his cheek. Red candles next time? He asked gingerly. Jake Wilson shot him a wounded look, and Michael Thompson promptly shut up. Then, when the lights flicked on, Clare thought I was about to confess my feelings to her, that I'd set the whole thing up. Yeah, and then what? Then she slapped me. Told me that next time I pursue a girl, I should try a confession that's a little less morbid. I swear, I've never seen a girl run so fast on a twisted ankle, limping and all. And the worst part? I had to clean up the whole mess. The haunted house staff wouldn't let me leave until the room was back to normal. Michael Thompson had been trying hard not to laugh, but at that last part, he couldn't hold it in any longer and let out a chuckle. Michael's laugh only made Jake Wilson's sulky look deepen, like he was some kind of heartbroken damsel. Sorry, Michael chuckled, but I really meant well, haha. You're still laughing? Wow, the nerve of this guy, he's still laughing. Michael really had meant well, but it had backfired. He patted Jake Wilson's shoulder reassuringly. Look on the bright side, he said. At least Clare Evans didn't actually turn you down, right? That means you still have a chance. Jake Wilson gave him a bewildered look. Why would I want her to accept? I don't even like her. Michael stopped laughing, stunned. You don't like Clare Evans? Who I like? Michael, you really don't know? Jake Wilson looked down, a little sheepish as he said it. Michael was dumbfounded. He'd been watching them closely, and it really seemed like there was something flirty going on between Jake Wilson and Clare Evans. It wasn't just him. Even Olivia Sullivan was convinced. But hearing Jake Wilson say this now, it really caught him off guard. Had he completely misread the situation? Michael suddenly felt conflicted. Normally, Jake Wilson was his best bud. Helping him out with whoever he liked, maybe playing wingman, would be totally normal. But his cousin, Emily Thompson, Michael had serious reservations about that. It wasn't that there was anything wrong with Jake Wilson. The issue was Emily Thompson. She was firmly against marriage. Emily Thompson would date, and probably have quite a few relationships in the future, but she never had any intention of settling down and starting a family. Right now, she might not even realize this inclination herself, but as she got older, it would only become stronger. In his past life, Michael and Olivia Sullivan's kids were already growing up, while Jake Wilson and Emily Thompson, both in their mid-30s, were still single. Both families were anxious and had even tried setting them up more than once, especially since Jake Wilson's feelings for Emily Thompson were an open secret. But Emily Thompson always refused. Michael had talked to her about it too, and only then did she finally reveal her true feelings. Michael, she'd said back then, pointing at herself with a carefree smile, you know, they say there's a bird in this world with no feet, one that only lands when it dies. I really like Jake, she continued, but he's the one person I absolutely can't be with. Because being with him feels like settling down, getting married, having kids. I wouldn't be Emily Thompson anymore. I'd become a wife, a mother, a daughter-in-law. All these roles. It feels like living for other people. I don't like that. I'd rather keep drifting, stay free. Being free until the day I die. That doesn't sound too bad, does it? That was Emily Thompson's answer, one her family didn't understand, and neither did mainstream society. But after that conversation, Michael stopped meddling. Everyone has the right to choose how they live, right? Emily Thompson, at least, was living life on her own terms. Meanwhile, back then, he himself had craved a cozy family life but was so consumed by his career, he ended up like the bird with no feet she described, only stopping when he died. It was hard to say who was really envious of whom. So, after his rebirth, when Olivia Sullivan mentioned that Jake Wilson and Clare Evans seemed to be hitting it off, Michael had actually been quite pleased. He thought it would be good if Jake could finally break free from that doomed attraction to Emily. Clare Evans was a good girl too, a bit feisty, maybe, but genuine and sincere. He hadn't even bothered asking Jake Wilson about it, knowing it would be pointless. He knew his friend too well. Putting it nicely, Jake was easygoing and amiable. Putting it bluntly, he was indecisive and easily swayed. Even if Jake was interested in Clare Evans, asking him directly would just make him hesitate, unable to commit, giving some vague, non-committal answer. Whenever Michael and Jake Wilson were together, Michael was always the one making plans and decisions. So this time, he'd intended to give his friend a little push. But he hadn't expected Jake Wilson to be so absolute about it, sounding like he truly had no interest in Clare Evans at all. Michael was suddenly in an awkward spot. He asked hesitantly, "You really don't like Clare Evans?" "Clare Evans? Clare Evans is great," Jake Wilson mumbled, looking a bit embarrassed. "But I already like someone else." "Heh, talk about stubborn." Jake Wilson protested. "Michael, you started this mess. After school starts, you're coming with me to clear things up with Clare Evans." "Oh, Michael stood up, brushing himself off. "I just remembered, I haven't finished my winter break homework yet. I should head back." "Hey, get back here." Forgetting everything else, Jake Wilson lunged and grabbed Michael around the waist, refusing to let go. In the end, Michael gave in and agreed to help Jake Wilson clear up the misunderstanding. However, he wasn't foolish enough to approach Clare Evans while she was still furious. She might just storm over to his house looking for trouble. Michael made a mental note to mention this to Olivia Sullivan when he got home. After all, she and Clare Evans were best friends. Some things would be easier coming from her. Lost in these thoughts, he and Jake Wilson walked into the arcade. Michael was already tired of the arcade games on the first floor, and the new dance machines weren't really his style. Usually, when they came here, he and Jake Wilson headed straight upstairs to play pool. But the arcade was more crowded than usual today. By the time they got to the second floor, all the pool tables were occupied. It made sense. Most people here were young, mainly students, and it was winter break, right before the New Year celebration. Jake Wilson glanced around, then pointed to the table furthest back. "Michael, see that one? There's only one person playing. Let's go ask to share. We can just cover their table fee. The pool tables at the arcade were rented by the hour, and it wasn't cheap, especially for students. Most people would happily agree to share if it meant getting their table fee covered for the afternoon. Besides, playing pool alone wasn't much fun anyway. Michael was just about to agree when he glanced over at the person playing at the far table and froze. Under the light hanging above the pool table, Violet Sullivan was chalking the tip of her cue. She then leaned over the table, cue in hand, her body bending in an attractive curve. Her tight sweater accentuated her figure, particularly the perfect curve of her chest. She wasn't old, but she was certainly well-developed. Could sisters from the same family really be that different? A flurry of thoughts flashed through Michael's mind. Luckily, the one person who could usually read his thoughts wasn't nearby right now. He also wondered why he'd run into Violet Sullivan here. Weren't there any pool halls in Green Valley? Why come all the way out to Pine Ridge County? Just then, Jake Wilson recognized her too. He pointed in surprise. Hey, Michael, isn't that Violet Sullivan? The one who hit on you last time? Nope. Wrong person. Gotta go. Michael shut it down immediately. Michael wasn't too thrilled about hanging out with that Violet Sullivan girl and lost interest in the pool hall. Forget it, he said to Jake Wilson. Want to hit the gaming lounge next door for a bit? Dinner later at the diner nearby. My treat. Jake felt bad. Let me get it. Money's tight for you right now, isn't it? He figured Michael's mom, Margaret Thompson, had probably docked his Christmas savings because of final exams, meaning he'd be broke until after New Year's. What Jake didn't know was that Michael had just dropped $130,000 without batting an eye and still had six figures sitting in his account. Michael laughed. Come on, how much can dinner cost? Let's go. Now you're talking. Generous. Jake buttered him up, happily waved goodbye to James Wilson, who was on the computer behind the counter, and followed Michael out the door. Not far from the Wilson family's arcade center, there was a gaming lounge. Back in '08, Pine Ridge County didn't really have internet cafes yet. The computers in the gaming lounge had just been upgraded from bulky CRT monitors to flat screens, and the atmosphere wasn't great like they became later. There were no separate smoking and non-smoking sections. Walking in meant hitting a wall of stale smoke, with cigarette butts scattered all over the floor. There were plenty of similar places nearby, charging maybe 2 quarters less per hour than the standard spots. You could get an hour online for 50 cents, some even charged just 5 quarters. Michael and Jake weren't adults yet. Luckily, things weren't too strict these days, and the lounge next to the Wilsons' arcade let them in. Otherwise, they would have had to find an unlicensed place. Inside, League of Legends wasn't huge yet. A lot of people were playing FPS games like CS or CF, while others played Audition Online, QQ Speed, Fantasy Westward Journey, or those private servers for old MMOs like Legend of Mir, the 1/to-level, $9.99 kind. They found a spot in a quieter corner where the smoke wasn't as thick. Jake grabbed 2 Cokes, plus a bag of spicy gluten strips, crunchy ramen snacks, potato chips, chicken feet, and other junk food. He handed Michael a Coke, dumped the snacks between their computers, and sank comfortably into his chair. Putting on his headset, he turned to Michael. Play some CS? Michael shrugged. Sure. They launched the game and started playing. Jake was a natural, easily racking up 10, 20 kills a round. Michael, on the other hand, was terrible. He'd often die moments after spawning, without even knowing where the shot came from. He hadn't played much growing up, no computer at home before graduating high school, and he wasn't really into games anyway. By college, while his roommates were teaming up online, he was already focused on making money. But Michael wasn't competitive about winning. Playing just to pass the time and have fun was fine. When he got tired, he'd sip his Coke, munch on snacks, and watch Jake play. Jake was totally into it, headset on, face flushed with excitement, muttering, Get him, get him. What are you doing wandering around? Picking magic mushrooms for your mom. Not only that, but when he was quick-scoping, his whole body would jerk as if he were actually lugging a sniper rifle onto the battlefield. Michael found watching Jake much more entertaining than playing himself. The only downside to the lounge was the noise. Like the girl trying hard to look cool, playing Audition Online 2 seats down, who was talking incredibly loudly on her phone. She kept peppering her sentences with annoying interjections like and plus cutesy sentence enders like yeah and la. Her affected Hong Kong/Taiwanese accent, combined with her alternative style, felt distinctly dated to Michael. Blame Meteor Garden. Anyway, that was the only Taiwanese idol drama Michael really remembered. Hey, let me tell you, La. It's Violet Sullivan, She says she wants to stay at my place for a few days, yeah? It's such a headache, La. My parents will never agree, and we don't even have a room for her, She's so rich, she should just get a hotel, La. She told me to meet her at the pool hall, but I ignored her, La. Let's just say my mom took my phone, La. Michael wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the girl was so loud it was impossible not to hear. When he heard Violet Sullivan, though, he couldn't help glancing over. He realized she looked familiar. One of the 2 tag-alongs he'd seen with Violet at the pool hall last time. He remembered her specifically because she'd wanted his number but was too shy to ask, making Violet do it for her. Feel much better. Jake finished a round, took off his headset, and sighed deeply. Michael, why'd you quit mid-game? He turned and saw Michael looking at the girl with the big, poofy hair. Whoa, Jake said, surprised. That's really your type? What are you talking about? Michael looked away and gave Jake's head a light smack. Jake just grinned, rubbing the back of his head. Speaking of which, how are things with you and Olivia Sullivan? All right. What do you mean, all right? Just start saving up for the wedding gift in a few years. Stop asking so many questions. Michael was joking, but Jake's eyes went wide. He froze, then shot up from his chair. Seriously? You landed her? He was genuinely stunned. Despite going along with Claire Evans' schemes for a bit, he'd never dreamed Michael would actually get together with Olivia Sullivan, especially not so easily. This was even more shocking than finding out Olivia had a crush on Michael in the first place. Thinking about how Michael had so easily won over the school's most sought-after girl, the supposedly untouchable Ice Queen, made Jake momentarily not even want to be friends with him anymore. He felt like bowing down, calling Michael master, and begging for lessons on how to pick up girls. Truth was, Michael was exaggerating. He wasn't officially dating Olivia yet. He was more like the boyfriend in waiting, still probably a year or more away from making it official. And asking Michael for tips would be useless anyway. Michael himself didn't grasp that the biggest factor was Olivia being able to hear his thoughts. Without that advantage, winning her over likely would have taken him much, much longer. It suddenly clicked for Jake. He slapped his forehead. No wonder you're being so generous today, Michael. So that's the big news. Okay. That little diner next door isn't going to cut it now. We need to eat somewhere nice. As Jake got excited thinking about where to go for dinner, Clare Evans popped into his mind. Come to think of it, Claire was the one most invested in this whole thing. He wondered if she knew yet. Jake's first instinct was to text Claire the good news immediately. But then he remembered their ongoing misunderstanding and how she was probably still sulking. He hesitated. For the next few days, Michael Thompson stayed cooped up at home. He only went out once during that time to settle the final payment at the old jewelry store and bring back the drawn gold thread. Robert Thompson's shop had also closed for the New Year holiday, and the apprentices had all gone home, so Michael Thompson didn't go back to the shop either. During the day, he spent his time in the small room at his uncle Benjamin Thompson's place, working on the gown. Most of the adults weren't home during the daytime, leaving Emily Thompson in charge of the younger kids, playing the role of king of the children. He kept busy until the 25th day of the lunar month, when the adults in the family finally put the mine business on hold and stayed home to prepare for the new year. That evening, Robert Thompson and Margaret Thompson got home very late, only to find Michael Thompson wasn't in his room. Where's Michael? Probably over at his uncle's place. Benjamin mentioned Michael had some kind of schoolcraft project he's been working on over there these past few days. Robert Thompson was tired and hungry after a long day. Why don't you make a bowl of noodles, he urged. We can grab a bite and get to sleep. I'll go get Michael Thompson. Just as Margaret Thompson was about to nod in agreement, the front door in the entryway opened, and Michael Thompson walked in, yawning. Seeing the dark circles under her son's eyes from lack of sleep, Margaret Thompson muttered, Being an art student isn't easy. Huh? Is the homework really that much? It's all right. Just trying to make it perfect. Michael Thompson mumbled evasively. It wasn't actually schoolwork he was doing, but if he didn't say that, his parents would start asking all sorts of questions, and explaining would be a hassle. As for his actual homework, he hadn't touched a bit of it. He planned to tackle it the night before school started. 1 pen, 1 lamp, 1 stack of papers, 1 miracle. Don't wear yourself out too much. If you really can't finish it, just let it go. Look at your eyes. You've got dark circles like a panda's. Margaret Thompson felt sorry for her son, but Robert Thompson chimed in. All right, the boy's old enough. He knows what he's doing. Leave him be. He's my son. Of course I'm going to worry. Margaret Thompson snapped back at Robert Thompson, then asked Michael Thompson, Michael, Mom's making noodles for your dad, do you? Michael Thompson shook his head. I'm not hungry. I'm tired. I'm just going to wash up and go to bed. All right, get some sleep then. You guys get some sleep too. After saying goodnight to his parents, Michael Thompson headed upstairs. After washing up and changing into pajamas, Michael Thompson went into his room. But he wasn't ready for sleep yet. He sat on his bed, pulled out the laptop he kept hidden, and took out his drawing tablet. Soon, several concept sketches of a gown appeared on the laptop screen. A fiery crimson base color with shimmering gold applied across the voluminous tulle skirt. Various measurements were noted beside the sketches. Michael Thompson rubbed his temples, fighting off fatigue and sleepiness. After a while, he felt a bit more awake and focused back on the computer screen. He held the stylus, occasionally sketching and tapping on the drawing tablet. An off-the-shoulder style looks good, but she's still in high school. Maybe something more conservative? Or maybe I could design a little bolero. A bolero could work, but how would it pair with the dress? I can skip the brooch design. That's not the main feature, it would just distract. Same logic, no need for tiny diamonds on the bodice either. Simplicity will better highlight its luxury. Embroidering the gold pattern onto the tulle material is harder than I thought. Various thoughts flashed through Michael Thompson's mind as his hands kept moving. Soon, he had modified parts of the original design and added many details. He didn't make major changes. For one, the original design was the result of much painstaking thought and was already nearly perfect. More importantly, the dress itself was almost finished. He just hadn't completed the final gold embroidery. This gown, with production costs alone running into the tens of thousands, was a challenge even for Michael Thompson. Making it entirely by hand was no easy task. It was only now that he truly appreciated how useful his passive skills, dexterous hands, and stability were. Previously, an evening gown like this would have taken him at least 2 or 3 months to make, with most of that time spent on the gold embroidery. But now, less than half a month after he'd officially started sewing, it was already nearly ready. Olivia Sullivan's birthday was on the 7th day of the new year, and Michael Thompson was confident he could finish the gown before then, perhaps even with a little time to spare for refining the details. He worked late into the night again. Looking at the finalized design draft, Michael Thompson nodded in satisfaction. Yawning, he shut down the computer and finally went to sleep. The next day, Michael Thompson dragged himself out of bed around 5 or 6 in the morning, before the sky had even lightened, and headed back to the small room with the sewing machine at Uncle Benjamin Thompson's house. Days passed like this. He didn't neglect his carving practice or his high school studies either. Unable to find time during the day, he squeezed them into his nightly dream training sessions. While others might work a maximum of 24 hours a day, Michael Thompson was different. He needed to operate nearly around the clock, putting in 96 hours, since 8 hours of real sleep equaled 80 hours in the dream training sessions. Seriously, nobody managed time better than him. But even Michael Thompson found this intense schedule draining. Once Olivia Sullivan's birthday gift was finished, he planned to take advantage of the New Year holiday to completely crash at home for a few days, the kind where you even have meals brought to you in bed. The 27th day of the 12th lunar month arrived, which was Michael Thompson's birthday. However, he wasn't really in the habit of celebrating it. In earlier years, the family wasn't as well off, and since his birthday was only 3 days before New Year's Eve, Margaret Thompson had simply combined the celebrations, making the New Year's Eve dinner serve as his birthday meal too. It saved money. That's why there was always a cake at the Thompson family's New Year's Eve dinner. Although he didn't particularly like cake himself, the younger kids usually ended up eating it. Margaret Thompson, perhaps feeling a bit guilty, insisted on adding that touch of birthday ritual for him, so she bought a cake every year. Olivia Sullivan, who also had a birthday around the New Year, wasn't quite as unlucky as Michael Thompson. Her birthday was definitely celebrated separately from the New Year's Eve dinner. Not only that, but the Sullivan family threw quite a large birthday party for her, inviting various business associates for a lively event. Frankly, it was just an excuse to host a small business networking event. It couldn't be helped, the timing was good. Right after the New Year, when everyone generally had more free time. Olivia Sullivan had wanted to invite her own friends to her birthday party, but her family initially disagreed. It was only after she spoke to her grandfather that she was allowed to invite them. Before this year, however, her only friend had been Clare Evans. This year, Michael Thompson would be added to the list. Although Michael Thompson didn't celebrate his birthday, Margaret Thompson still got up early that morning, cooked her son a bowl of noodles, and boiled 2 eggs as a small birthday ritual. Time flew by, and soon it was the morning of New Year's Eve. On this very day, Michael Thompson sat in the small study, leaning back and admiring the finished gown. He let out a long sigh of relief. Finally, it's done. The small study had been cleared out. Next to the window stood a sewing machine, and scattered across the floor were remnants of unsorted fabric. In the center of the room was a mannequin dressed in a bright red Western-style gown. Michael Thompson sat before it, gently holding the bottom of an embroidery hoop with his left hand while snipping an incredibly fine gold thread with scissors in his right. Snip! The scissors made a soft sound as the gold thread broke. With a few deft movements of the needle, the loose end was woven among the other gold threads, disappearing from sight. The embroidery hoop was quickly removed, revealing the finished piece. Michael looked up at the garment he had completed with his own hands. Relief washed over his features, the tension easing from him as he let out a breath. Finally, he sighed, it's done. Outside, the morning sun was slowly rising, sending rays of light through the window and onto the study floor. Michael stood up, pulled the half-drawn curtains fully aside, and opened the window. A cool breeze drifted in, stirring a lock of his hair. He turned back to look. The angled sunlight illuminated the red gown. A lifelike golden phoenix seemed to descend from the left breast, its tail feathers fanning out across the voluminous skirt, shimmering in the light. As the breeze stirred, the gown's full skirt moved with it, making the golden phoenix seem to come alive, as if flapping its wings, ready to soar into the sky. Even Michael found himself momentarily captivated by the sight, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. Perfect. This wasn't just a dress, it was a work of art. Even for Michael, who had achieved fame in a past life, few of the countless designs he'd created could compare to this one. The gown represented a unique fusion of East and West. The silhouette of a Western evening dress seamlessly blended with Chinese embroidery techniques, achieving a perfect harmony that highlighted its exquisite beauty. This reflected the artistic philosophy Michael had always pursued. However, this same philosophy had also led him to create many unconventional pieces that weren't accepted by the mainstream. Criticism was commonplace, and he had detractors both at home and abroad. He had gradually realized that while art itself knows no borders, the appreciation of it does. Creating something that people in China found beautiful and that resonated with people in various foreign countries was no easy task. After all, the average person doesn't necessarily appreciate the works of Picasso or Van Gogh. But this time, with this golden phoenix embroidery, he was confident that even the average person would be struck by its beauty. Michael admired it for a long while before reluctantly tearing his gaze away. He carefully packed the evening gown into a cardboard box and then began tidying the small study. The 1 pounds of gold thread were almost entirely used up. Less than 10 grams remained. Michael decided to save the remnants, thinking they might be useful later. As for the other fabric scraps, he didn't bother trying to salvage them. He gathered them up and threw them away. He couldn't just toss these scraps in the room's trash can, though. Uncle Benjamin had a discerning eye and would surely ask questions if he saw such high-quality material being discarded. Once everything was cleaned up, Michael placed his tools on the sewing machine, picked up the box containing the gown, and carried it back to his room. When he came out of the adjacent room, heading toward his own house, he saw his grandmother, his mother, and Aunt Daisy gathered in the yard for Thanksgiving dinner. Red candles flickered on the large table, centered around a big roasted turkey. Platters nearby held fruit, pastries, and a whole buttered chicken. From the neighbors down the way, the loud pop-pop-pop of firecracker strings filled the air, adding to the festive noise. The holiday spirit was thick in the air. Michael let out a soft breath, a puff of white vapor escaping in the cool air. A smile touched his lips as he carried the box inside. Once home, Michael hid the box securely under his bed and crawled back under the covers to catch up on sleep. He'd intended to sleep until lunchtime, but the incessant popping of firecrackers outside kept him from sleeping soundly. Being a light sleeper, Michael woke up around 10 in the morning. He'd managed about 3 more hours of sleep, but still felt drained when he woke up. He had expended too much mental energy recently. Michael stayed put, burrowed under the covers, waiting to see how long it would take the need to pee to overcome his lethargy. Before it reached that point, however, his dad, Robert Thompson, burst into the room, followed by Uncle Benjamin's young son. Michael, Uncle Robert says we're going to buy fireworks. Get up. His little cousin, Liam Thompson, immediately launched himself onto the bed, shoving his ice-cold hands under the covers. The cold shock jolted Michael awake. He scrambled up, annoyed, but Liam had already scampered off, giggling. He decided right then that this year's New Year's gift for his little cousin wouldn't be the planned Transformer toy, but rather elementary school workbooks. Let the kid get a head start. Robert Thompson chuckled. Come on, get up. Emily and the others are waiting downstairs. All right, let me get dressed. Michael scratched his messy bed head and reluctantly climbed out of bed. After quickly washing up, Michael went downstairs, grabbed a couple of still-warm buns, and then led the younger kids out to buy fireworks. Out on the street, small groups of children were everywhere, playing with firecrackers. They'd bend over, light a fuse on the ground, then clamp their hands over their ears and run off yelling, followed moments later by a loud pop. Robert Thompson drove the kids to a fireworks stand. He arranged with the vendor for the big fireworks the Thompson family planned to set off that evening, while the Thompson youngsters eagerly grabbed an assortment of smaller fireworks, a little bit of every type and style, to play with at home. Michael and Emily Thompson stood watching. They were both past the age of lighting firecrackers on the street themselves. Their main job now was to keep an eye on the younger kids and make sure no one got hurt. Once the fireworks were bought, the group headed home, excited and loaded down with their purchases. Back home, the roasted turkey that had been set out earlier was cooked now. The large slow cooker was still out in the yard, and Margaret Thompson was using chopsticks to fish out pieces like pig's tongue and tail from the pot, placing them onto a large platter. Seeing the kids return, her plump face crinkled into a wide smile. "Who wants some head cheese?" Me. The younger kids, drawn by the aroma, eagerly raised their hands, their eyes shining. Leading the charge was Michael Thompson himself, apparently just as eager as the younger kids. Margaret Thompson playfully scolded her own big rascal, Michael Thompson, then chuckled and went into the kitchen for a small knife to carve a couple of plates of the freshly cooked pork for the children. While the Thompson family was deep in their holiday festivities, the Sullivan family was busy preparing their Christmas dinner. The Sullivan family's house staff bustled in and out, busy preparing the Christmas dinner for the evening. Most of the Sullivans, however, weren't home. They had their own social engagements. Olivia Sullivan's parents were out. Her father had left early that morning to meet with some business associates, and her mother was out playing mahjong with a group of wealthy wives. Even Ethan Sullivan, who had recently been grounded by Arthur Sullivan, had managed to sneak out. Word was that Arthur Sullivan was determined to send Ethan abroad this time and was already working on the visa application. Ethan would likely be leaving a few months after the New Year's celebration, so Arthur had been turning a blind eye to Ethan's occasional escapes. Olivia Sullivan had been attending intensive holiday cram school classes. But with the New Year's celebration approaching, the classes had let out, leaving her no choice but to return home. Still, on New Year's Eve, Olivia remained in her room, working on practice tests from the cram school. Being in the city center meant no fireworks were allowed. As she sat at home, pen in hand, staring at the test paper, it struck her that the holiday felt just like any other ordinary day. There was no real difference. She had tried giving herself a day off for the new year, attempting to watch TV or play computer games. But within 10 minutes, she'd grow bored and end up back in her room, grinding through practice problems. Yet, this time, back in her room, Olivia found that while she recognized each character on the test paper individually, they failed to form coherent meaning in her mind when strung together. She was merely skimming. She couldn't settle down to study. Resting her chin on her hand, she stared at the test paper on her desk, but her attention kept drifting irresistibly to the phone lying beside it. She picked it up occasionally to check. But apart from a New Year's greeting from Clare Evans, there were no other messages. Michael Thompson, that guy was really... Olivia started grinding her teeth. She had actually been quite touched when he'd earnestly promised, "I absolutely won't disturb your studies, Olivia. We'll talk after the college entrance exams." But did that have to mean complete radio silence? Since that day at Ark Amusement Park, she hadn't seen Michael Thompson once, received a single phone call or text message. She even checked Messenger daily. Nothing. If she didn't contact him, would he really just not contact her at all? At least, they should see each other once a week. Sigh. She slumped onto the desk, her cheek pressed against the cool surface, head turned towards her phone, unable to stop a sigh from escaping. It was utterly exasperating. What's Michael Thompson doing right now? Olivia muttered softly, bringing the phone closer. She wanted to send Michael Thompson a message. Of course, it absolutely wasn't because she missed him. It was just a normal holiday greeting, basic etiquette for Chinese people. Grandpa had taught her since she was little to be a polite child, and also. Anyway, that was all. Olivia mentally constructed a 3,000-word justification before finally convincing herself to pick up the phone and send Michael Thompson a text. Because she wasn't using a smartphone, she still used a flip phone, a cute, compact pink one with Hello Kitty stickers. This phone couldn't run Messenger, so the message had to be a text. Olivia held the phone with both hands, typing rapidly, tap, 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 composing a message primarily condemning Michael Thompson for neglecting her recently. The gist was, his behavior was criminal, punishable by wifelessness. But she couldn't go out, and after hitting the character limit, she looked at the massive block of text she'd written, a mini essay, and flushed crimson, a look of embarrassment crossing her face. Tap, 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 she deleted it all. After much hesitation, she finally sent a very standard message. Happy New Year. What are you doing right now? After sending it, Olivia stared nervously at the phone screen. But Michael Thompson replied quickly. Almost immediately after a message went out, his reply came in. He sent an MMS, a picture message. In the photo, he was grinning brightly at the camera, flashing a peace sign. Behind him, a group of kids squatted on the side of the street, setting off fireworks, the kind that shot sparks head high, when lit, quite dazzling. Looking at the photo, Olivia broke into a sweet smile without even realizing it. Following the photo was Michael Thompson's text, being the king of the kids, leading the little ones and setting off fireworks. Olivia noticed something different about Michael Thompson in the picture. Why are your dark circles so heavy? Didn't you rest well? Are they? Maybe it's just the phone's low pixels making the picture look bad. Never mind that. What are you doing? Olivia took a picture of the half-finished test paper on her desk. She considered including herself in the photo like Michael Thompson had, but felt too shy, ultimately just snapping a picture of her desk. Michael Thompson replied, Olivia, what is this behavior? This is wasting precious time. Who doesn't set off fireworks on New Year's Eve? Go out and play, darn it. Olivia looked at the text, pouted, and typed out slowly, character by character. Fireworks aren't allowed in the city center. Michael Thompson urged, your yard is so big, just set them off secretly, no one will know. Olivia replied immediately, no way, my family would give me grief. Besides, I'm too old for fireworks anyway. I want to play when I was little, but it's no fun alone. All right, then what else do you want to do for the new year? Build a snowman? I've always thought it would be fun to build a snowman in the yard myself during the new year. Olivia's inner child was sparked by Michael Thompson, and she eagerly started chatting about things she'd wanted to do during the holidays as a kid. As she was texting, a commotion outside her window caught her attention. Olivia got up curiously, walked to the window, and pulled back the curtain. She saw Uncle Victor in the yard, yelling furiously into his phone. She suddenly remembered that she hadn't seen Violet Sullivan around the house lately. The house staff had mentioned Violet hadn't been home for several days. Seeing her third uncle like this, on New Year's Eve no less, did that mean Violet still hadn't returned? No wonder her uncle was so anxious and angry. After all, Grandpa absolutely required the entire family to be present for Christmas dinner on this day. Not a single person missing. Meanwhile, in Pine Creek Town, Michael Thompson, sitting on the granite steps outside a shop, looked at his phone screen with a slightly troubled expression. Setting off fireworks was easy. Although fireworks weren't allowed in the Green Valley City Center, there were places where you could set them off, like along the riverbank. Every New Year's Eve, Green Valley had a fireworks display there. But building a snowman was tricky. Green Valley was in Jeong Province, a southern coastal region where it was normal to go years without snow. Having it snow conveniently on New Year's Eve to build a snowman was a rare occurrence. This year had been particularly cold across the country, with blizzards up north, and even Green Valley had seen significant snowfall recently. The problem was, it wasn't snowing today. Michael Thompson scratched his head, thought for a while, then took out his phone to call his second maternal uncle. Because Green Valley was mountainous, many villages were located on mountains. Margaret Thompson's hometown was Saddle Village on Saddle Mountain within Pine Creek Town. The village name was quite literal. Margaret Thompson had married out, but her family still lived in Saddle Village. The temperature on the mountain was much colder than down below. Often, there would be no snow on the ground while the mountaintop was thickly covered. Michael Thompson remembered the recent snowfall and figured there might still be unmelted snow higher up. That's why he contacted his second uncle. Hey, second uncle, why don't you and your family come to our place for New Year's this year? What do you mean, don't want to trouble us? I'm craving some of our homegrown chicken. Remember to bring a nice fat one, okay? Michael Thompson's second uncle was an honest farmer who ran a fish pond back home, primarily selling fish, but also growing vegetables and raising chickens, ducks, and geese. If Michael Thompson had just asked them to come directly, his uncle definitely wouldn't have agreed. Margaret Thompson had called several times before, but his uncle had always refused, citing his mother-in-law's mobility issues, though the real reason was fear of imposing. But Michael Thompson knew how to phrase it. Hearing that his nephew was craving their free-range chicken, his uncle happily agreed. After settling that, Michael Thompson added casually, by the way, second uncle, has the snow melted up there yet? Oh, not yet, huh? Well, could you pack some up and bring it down for me? Pack a good amount. Nothing much, just thought building a snowman in the yard for New Year's would feel more festive, right? Okay, that's settled then. Come early. Annie's cooking is way better than my mom's. Let her show off her skills too. After giving his instructions, Michael Thompson hung up, satisfied. Luckily, the weather had been cold lately, and the snow on the mountain hadn't melted yet. Done deal. Around lunchtime, Michael Thompson and Emily Thompson each grabbed a younger cousin who had played wildly and didn't want to go home, heading back from the bustling street for lunch. Lunch was simple. The adults were busy preparing the main courses for the evening feast, so they needed to save room. Lunch consisted of noodles with some homemade smoked meat, a plate of freshly carved roasted turkey, and a serving of Pine Ridge County specialty dish, stewed pork knuckle shredded by hand, mixed with a secret sauce, topped with a pork skin colored with brown sugar, and steamed until incredibly fragrant. It was a very tasty side dish, usually only made for special occasions like the New Year due to the effort involved. After slurping down a bowl of noodles, Michael Thompson didn't want to stay cooped up in his room in the afternoon. He sat in the yard, basking in the sun and helping watch the kids. In the afternoon, his second uncle's family arrived, much to Margaret Thompson's surprise and delight. She grinned so widely her back teeth showed. His second aunt was also a diligent person. As soon as she entered the yard, she put on oversleeves and an apron and joined the women's league in the yard, starting to prepare vegetables, wash them, devein shrimp, and so on. Michael Thompson's maternal grandmother had some dementia and severe Parkinson's, needing help to walk, but she was in good spirits today. Holding her grandson's hand, she chattered incessantly. However, her speech was unclear, and she spoke entirely in dialect, so Michael Thompson couldn't understand much. He just smiled and nodded occasionally. It was normal not to understand. Dialects in the Green Valley area could vary so much that adjacent villages might not understand each other. A river or a mountain between them could mean a dialect difference as significant as two different languages. Grandma, Robert Thompson, you've gotten handsome these past few years, dialect. Michael Thompson, Grandma, but you really want to marry my Chauffin? Chauffin's no good, skinny as a rail, and has a temper. How about my fifth daughter? Though she's only 12, dialect. Michael Thompson, you bet. Grandma, you really want Chauffin? Oh my, then we have to agree now. No backing out later, dialect. Michael Thompson, absolutely. The old lady's dementia had clearly flared up again. She thought it was 40 years ago when Robert Thompson first came courting Margaret Thompson. Michael Thompson, not understanding a word, just nodded and agreed along, the two carrying on a conversation completely at cross purposes. His second uncle, standing nearby, was so embarrassed he could have dug a 3-bedroom apartment under his feet. Finally, Margaret Thompson couldn't listen anymore. She came over and smacked Michael Thompson on the back of the head, scolding, "What are you agreeing to when you don't understand? If you have this much free time, go take some New Year's dishes over to the Wilson family." Grandma tremblingly reached out to mediate. "Chauffin, don't hit him. If you hit him again, you really won't be able to get married." Dialect. Margaret Thompson's liver hurt with anger, but she couldn't say anything to the old lady, so she could only vent her frustration on her eldest son. But Michael Thompson was sharp. He'd known this plump woman since birth. Seeing her expression change, he quickly offered the old lady a couple of auspicious phrases and then slipped away like grease on a pan. Margaret Thompson went inside to take care of her mother, while Michael Thompson left the house with his second uncle, heading down a mountain path to the road. The Thompson family lived halfway up the mountain, accessible only by a stretch of granite steps. People could walk up, but vehicles couldn't. So, his uncle's motorized tricycle was parked down by the roadside. His uncle usually drove this tricycle to the county town to sell fish. It had a particularly large cargo bed in the back. "Nephew, I brought the snow you wanted for the snowman. Is it enough?" the uncle asked, leading Michael Thompson to the tricycle. Michael Thompson's eyes lit up as he saw the snow packed into 2 extra-large styrofoam boxes in the cargo bed. He nodded repeatedly. "Enough, enough." His uncle was really generous. The 2 boxes combined must have weighed dozens of pounds, enough to build a snowman as tall as Michael Thompson himself. Michael Thompson said cheekily, "Second uncle, could I borrow this tricycle for a day?" His uncle stared. "What do you need this for? Do you even know how to drive it?" "Sure, what's so hard about it?" His uncle was still hesitant. "I was planning to go back tonight." "Oh, come on. Aren't you going to drink tonight for New Year's? If you drink, you shouldn't drive. Don't drink and drive. Don't drive and drink. The mountain roads aren't safe at night anyway." Michael Thompson launched into a lecture on the dangers of drunk driving and finally persuaded his uncle. The uncle handed Michael Thompson the keys, cautioning, "Just drive it around down here, okay? Don't go on a main road. It's not safe." Michael Thompson patted his chest in assurance. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." After his uncle left, he confidently hopped onto the tricycle and drove it around a couple of times on the quiet road, quickly getting the hang of it like an experienced driver. Although it was his first time driving a tricycle, he had ridden motorcycles for a few years in his past life, so he had enough driving experience. After practicing for a bit, he sat on the vehicle to rest, taking out his phone, intending to check the time. He then noticed several missed calls from Jake Wilson that he hadn't received. Michael Thompson always kept his phone on silent at home. If it suddenly buzzed and Margaret Thompson discovered he'd bought a phone, he'd be skinned alive. He immediately called back. "Hey, fatty, what a coincidence. My mom just told me to bring some New Year's dishes over to your place. I was just about to head out." "It is a coincidence. I was just about to ask you to come over quickly, Michael." Jake Wilson sounded hesitant on the other end, as if struggling to say something difficult. Michael Thompson frowned. "What's wrong?" It's hard to explain over the phone. Can you just come over quickly? It's urgent." "All right, I'll be right there." Michael Thompson hung up, muttering, "What's going on? So mysterious." By the time Michael Thompson arrived at the Wilson place, Jake Wilson was already waiting anxiously by the door. But when he saw Michael Thompson getting out of a three-wheeler, he froze for a moment. "Michael, what's this? A holiday side job? Cut the crap and help me get this stuff down first." Michael Thompson grabbed 2 bags of New Year's dishes from the back of the three-wheeler, stewed pig's trotters, lamb, plus a live fish and some fresh fruit. All gifts the Thompson family had prepared for the Wilsons. Jake Wilson came over to help carry things and immediately reached for the 2 largest styrofoam boxes in the back. Michael Thompson quickly stopped him. "Those aren't for your family. It's not food in there. Grab those 2 jugs of bourbon instead. It's homemade. Uncle Wilson's been mentioning it to my dad since before the new year." "Oh." Jake Wilson went to grab the bourbon. It was just in 2 large, rinsed-out Coke bottles, which looked a bit shabby, but the 2 families were close enough not to care about appearances. The 2 carried the items into the gaming lounge. It was closed for the holiday, but the Wilsons lived upstairs, so they had to go through it. Carrying the bags, Michael Thompson asked as they walked inside, "So, what was so urgent you had to call me over?" Jake Wilson looked troubled and stammered, "You'll see when we get upstairs." Michael Thompson chuckled. "We're already here. Why the mystery?" Just as he spoke, they reached the 3rd floor. He pushed the door open and immediately saw a familiar figure sitting on the sofa near the Wilsons' coffee table, eating rice noodles. The person on the sofa noticed Michael Thompson too. The hand holding the chopsticks paused for a second, but then she quickly lowered her head and kept eating silently. While Michael Thompson was still taking this in, Laura Wilson came out of the kitchen, smiling as soon as she saw him. "Michael's here." Michael Thompson quickly snapped back to reality, deciding to ignore the person on the sofa for now. He said cheerfully, "Happy New Year, Mrs. Wilson. Where's Uncle Wilson?" "He went to play pool hall with the neighbors." "Ah, too bad." Michael Thompson carried the bags towards the kitchen. "Mrs. Wilson, I brought over some New Year's food. I'll just leave it in the kitchen." Laura Wilson gently scolded. "Your family's always so generous every year." "Oh, you shouldn't have, really. It's nothing. We're neighbors. Just sharing the holiday spirit." "Oh, and I brought that bourbon Uncle Wilson kept asking about. Maybe you and Uncle Wilson can have some tonight, Mrs. Wilson." Michael Thompson went into the kitchen, put everything down, and came back out. Laura Wilson asked, "Have you had lunch yet? I made a big pot of bone broth this morning. Why don't you and your friend have a bowl of noodles before you go?" Michael Thompson paused, glanced towards the living room, and quickly said, "Mrs. Wilson, you misunderstand. She's not my friend." Just then, the girl sitting on the sofa interjected coolly, "Yes, we are." Michael Thompson looked at her. She was biting her lips slightly, looking back at him. He looked away, sighed, and lowered his head. "Okay, fine. Sort of. But I already had lunch, Mrs. Wilson. Gotta save room for dinner tonight." Laura Wilson covered her mouth, laughing, and headed towards the kitchen. "All right, then. I'll pack up some pork bones for you to take home." Once Laura Wilson was back in the kitchen, Jake Wilson sidled up to Michael Thompson, completely bewildered. "Michael, what's going on?" Michael Thompson was just as confused. "You're asking me? I want to know what's going on, too. Why is she at your place?" "She slept on the sofa in our shop last night. My dad was going to call the police, but she said she was your friend, so I called you right away." Jake Wilson still couldn't figure it out. He should know Michael Thompson's friends. But this girl, aside from seeing her in the gaming lounge a couple of times, Jake didn't even know her name, and he'd never heard Michael mention knowing her. Jake Wilson glanced towards the sofa and lowered his voice. "Michael, do you really know her? If she's trouble, maybe we should call the cops." "No." Michael Thompson nodded resignedly. "I know her. She's Olivia Sullivan's younger cousin." "Ollie, Olivia Sullivan's younger cousin?" "Yeah. Then why isn't she at home? Why did she come looking for you?" "How should I know? Forget it. I'll just go ask her myself." Michael Thompson and Jake Wilson muttered to each other for a while, both eventually looking over at Violet Sullivan sitting on the sofa. Michael Thompson walked over and sat down next to Violet Sullivan. "All right, spill it. What's the deal?" Violet Sullivan glanced at him without speaking, slurped up the last mouthful of noodles, lifted the bowl to drink every last drop of broth, then finally put the bowl down. She licked her lips lightly and commented, "A little salty." Michael Thompson looked at the bowl on the coffee table, cleaner than her face, and nodded. "That bowl of noodles is $1.25. Cash, messenger, or Cash App?" Violet Sullivan scoffed. "I didn't need it at your house." Michael Thompson pointed at her, then looked at Jake Wilson. "All right, Jake, this is your house. You deal with her." Jake Wilson gave an awkward laugh. "Michael, come on, let it go. It's just one bowl of noodles." "Tell her. Is this about the money? We don't even know her well, and she's using my name to freeload." "All right." Jake Wilson reluctantly held out his hand towards Violet Sullivan. $1.25. Violet Sullivan said stiffly. "I didn't ask for it. That woman brought it over herself. Can't you even call her auntie?" Michael Thompson scolded. Violet Sullivan just turned her head away, pretending not to hear. Jake Wilson looked back and forth between them and tried to placate Michael. "Michael, forget it, okay? She's Olivia Sullivan's sister, after all. Just tell Olivia, and her family can come pick her up." Michael Thompson nodded and took out his phone to make a call. But as soon as Violet Sullivan heard this, she lunged forward to grab Michael Thompson's phone. "I'm not going back." Michael Thompson held her head back with one hand while holding the phone far away with the other. "Running away from home? Huh. None of your business. Don't call. Still acting tough. I couldn't care less about you. You're nothing to me." Michael Thompson put his phone away. "Fine, I won't call. But talk. Why are you here?" Violet Sullivan's face flushed red. She stammered for a moment before sitting back down properly and mumbling, "I have nowhere to go. Never mind downtown. There are plenty of hotels around here. Not all of them close for the new year. I don't have any money." Violet Sullivan looked mortified, her voice getting quieter. "My family cut off my cards, and I spent all the cash I had with me." She felt truly wronged. She had originally planned to stay with a good friend for a few days, but every single one of her usual good friends came up with all sorts of excuses when she asked. Basically, none of them wanted her staying at their place. It was only then that Violet Sullivan truly understood how cold people could be. Her usual followers, who always trailed behind her calling Violet. Violet, the one she always took out and treated, never letting them spend a dime. When she actually needed help, not a single one was willing to step up for her. Just a few days ago, Violet Sullivan still had enough money for a hotel room. During the day, she'd surf the internet or hang out at the arcade center. But then the money ran out, and she couldn't afford the hotel anymore. Her only option was to pay for an all-nighter at a gaming lounge, sleeping in the smoky, grimy place. Honestly, she was incredibly lucky. A young girl staying alone in a gaming lounge for days without something bad happening was a miracle. By yesterday, her last bit of cash was gone. She had to sneak into the Wilson family's arcade and ended up sleeping on a sofa on the first floor. It wasn't until morning when the Wilsons decided to close for the New Year celebration holiday and give the place a thorough cleaning that they found her. James Wilson's first instinct was to call 911. In a panic, Violet remembered that the Wilsons' son, Jake Wilson, was good friends with Michael Thompson. She quickly claimed to be Michael's friend and asked Jake to call him to come pick her up. Jake was completely baffled, but made the call anyway. Michael knew the rest of the story. He listened quietly as Violet explained everything, then nodded and stood up. "Let's go. Don't cause these people any more trouble." Violet got up too, asking blankly, "Go where?" "Guess it's my unlucky day. I'll take you home." As soon as he said that, Violet plopped back down onto the sofa, shaking her head vigorously. "I'm not going back." Michael found it slightly amusing. "You don't have any money. Where else would you go if not home? Besides, it's New Year celebrations. Nothing's even open to get food." Violet just sat there silently, gripping the sofa arms. Her stance was clear. She wasn't leaving. Michael felt helpless. "All right, what do you suggest then? I won't be any trouble for you. Just lend me some money." Seriously, Michael wanted nothing to do with her problems. Violet wasn't his sister, just Olivia Sullivan's cousin. And considering the Sullivan family's drama, which was like something out of a palace intrigue show, Olivia and Violet weren't even close. Michael cared even less about Violet's situation. He'd personally sent his own former brother-in-law to prison. Why would he bother with a distant cousin-in-law? Still, letting her freeload off the Wilsons wasn't right either. Michael decided spending some money to avoid further hassle was the best option. He pulled out his wallet, opened it, and started counting the dollar bills. "Okay, how much?" Violet counted on her fingers for a moment, then held up one index finger. 10,000, for starters." Michael slowly closed his wallet and stuffed it back into his pocket. He pointed at her and said to Jake, "Jake Wilson, go ahead and call the cops. I don't know her. I'm leaving. A high school kid asking another high school kid for $10,000. And for starters, did that mean she planned on asking for more later? Michael thought she'd ask for maybe $200 at most. Nope, didn't know her, definitely not well acquainted. Time to bail. As he turned to leave, Violet lunged forward and grabbed his arm, holding on tight. I'm not asking for free. I'll give you collateral. She frantically rummaged through her bag, pulled out something that looked like a car key, and shoved it into Michael's hand. Michael stared at the key. What's this? Motorcycle key. My bike is yours as collateral. You're a high school girl riding a motorcycle. I bought the bike for over $30,000, just got it mid-year. It's collateral for $10,000. Take it or leave it. Just as Michael was about to lecture her on what $10,000 meant to an average high school student with no income, Aunt Maggie packed these up for you. What are you two doing? Michael smoothly pulled his arm free from Violet's grasp. It's nothing, Aunt Maggie, he said with a smile. I'll take my friend and go now. Sorry for the trouble. Trouble? Don't be silly, you're like family. Can you manage all this? Aunt Maggie can help you carry it down. No, it's fine. Violet Sullivan, you can help carry one. Michael picked up one tub himself, casually ordering Violet around. Violet shot him an annoyed glare, but since she needed his help, she swallowed her pride and picked up the other tub. Laura Wilson had been generous. The pork bones themselves didn't have much meat, being mostly marrow bones, but she'd given them a good 15 pounds worth. The real treasure was the broth, simmered for over 10 hours, perfect for noodles or rice vermicelli. The disposable tubs were filled to the brim, containing large chunks of braised meat along with the bones. Each tub must have weighed around 20 pounds. Though Violet looked tall and slender, she was still just a girl, and the tub felt heavy as soon as she lifted it. Jake Wilson stood up. Michael Thompson, wanting to help carry that down. Michael Thompson, holding his tub easily with one hand, waved him off. Now we're good. See ya. He led Violet out of the Wilson home. By the time they got down the 3 flights of stairs and outside, Violet was panting, setting the tub down and putting her hands on her hips to catch her breath. Michael Thompson pointed to the 3-wheeler parked by the curb. Put in the back. Don't spill it. Violet Sullivan's face scrunched up, her makeup nearly cracking. She clicked her tongue in annoyance, but got up and helped load the tub into the back of the vehicle. Michael Thompson hopped into the driver's seat of the 3-wheeler and pulled a $20 bill from his wallet. Thanks for the help. You can go now. Violet Sullivan didn't take the money. She stared at the bill, her brow furrowing tighter. What do you mean? Your payment. The bus to the city is $15. That leaves you $5. You can grab a rickshaw at the corner to take you to the station. Who wants your payment? Violet Sullivan angrily threw the $20 bill onto the ground. Michael Thompson remained unfazed, picking up the dollar bill. Do you know how much it costs to carry a 5-gallon water jug up 5 flights of stairs? That's way heavier than this tub of soup, and it only pays $2. For this $20, I could get a delivery guy to haul water up 5 floors 10 times. He held the dollar bill in one hand and flicked it sharply with the fingers of his other hand, making a snapping sound. A smirk played on his lips. Money doesn't grow on trees, you know? Do you have any idea what $10,000 means to a normal high school student? Even if I had that kind of money, why would I lend it to you? Honestly, we've only met a few times. Violet Sullivan held out her palm, showing him the key again. I told you, I'm not asking for free. My motorcycle is collateral. When I have the money to pay you back, I'll buy it back. Her emotions were running high, her chest heaving. She felt like Michael Thompson was just messing with her. Finally, her eyes reddened. She snatched the key back and stomped her foot. Fine, don't lend it to me. Who cares? As she turned away, Michael Thompson spoke from behind her. It's not entirely impossible to lend it to you. Violet Sullivan spun back around, gritting her teeth, furious. Was he going to mess with her again? Under her glare, Michael Thompson pulled out his phone and pointed at the screen. Okay, first things first. I'm calling Olivia Sullivan. Don't try to grab my phone. I'm not forcing you to go home. Whether I lend you the money or not depends on what she says. Deal. Only then did Violet Sullivan stop, allowing Michael Thompson to make the call. He quickly dialed Olivia Sullivan's number. In Green Valley, Arthur Sullivan was in his company office, talking with several men in suits. Just then, his assistant came in holding a cell phone, leaned down, and whispered something in Arthur Sullivan's ear. After listening, Arthur Sullivan nodded and smiled apologetically at the men in the office. Excuse me, I need to take this call. Probably a junior member of the family calling to wish me an early Happy New Year. The men smiled kindly. Of course, Chairman. Go right ahead. Arthur Sullivan took the phone, stood up, and walked over to the window. Hello. As the person on the other end spoke, the smile on his face slowly froze. Meanwhile, After his call connected, Michael Thompson glanced at Violet Sullivan and stepped away to talk. Violet Sullivan couldn't hear what Michael Thompson was saying, but she didn't really care. Olivia Sullivan wouldn't meddle in her affairs and couldn't control her anyway. Her only concern was that Olivia Sullivan might tell Michael Thompson not to lend her the money. Violet Sullivan decided that if Michael Thompson refused to lend her the money, she'd just leave and figure something else out. Michael Thompson quickly finished his call, got onto his three-wheeled motor trike, and said to Violet Sullivan, "Let's go." Violet Sullivan eyed him warily. "Where are we going?" "To get you money." Violet Sullivan breathed a sigh of relief, but put on an indifferent expression and climbed into the back cargo area of the motor trike. Michael Thompson asked, "Don't want to sit up front?" "No thanks." "All right, suit yourself." He shrugged, indifferent, inserted the key, started the engine, and headed towards the nearest Bank of America branch. Pine Ridge County wasn't very large, but the side roads were rough and bumpy. The motor trike, lacking any sophisticated suspension, bounced Violet Sullivan around in the back until her butt ached. It didn't take long to get there. Michael Thompson went over to the ATM to withdraw the cash, while Violet Sullivan waited outside, rubbing her sore backside and looking a bit uncomfortable. A moment later, he came back out holding a wad of cash and handed it to Violet Sullivan. "Want to count it?" "It's not enough to bother counting." Violet Sullivan took the money directly, stuffed it into her bag, and then handed her motorcycle keys to Michael Thompson. "Here." The bike's parked in front of the arcade. Michael Thompson took the keys, tossed them in his hand for a moment, then chuckled and tossed them back to her. "Don't need him. Someone else is covering this for you." Violet Sullivan fumbled to catch the keys, frowning at him. What did he mean? Could Olivia Sullivan have paid it for her? Was she putting on a show of sisterly love for Michael Thompson? Such a goody two-shoes. Although Violet Sullivan grumbled inwardly, she felt a strange twinge regarding Olivia Sullivan. Whatever. If she wanted to play the saint, let her. Violet could always pay Olivia Sullivan back later. After taking the money, she turned to leave. Michael Thompson didn't stop her, just called out after her. "By the way, most places in town are closed for the New Year's celebration. The bus station still has a few spots open if you get hungry." Violet Sullivan's steps faltered slightly as she muttered to herself. Just a minute ago, he was acting so aloof, and now he's pretending to care? Even so, she wouldn't forget how he'd messed with her earlier, and she certainly wouldn't thank him. Violet Sullivan snorted softly and walked away abruptly. After parting ways with Michael Thompson, Violet Sullivan wandered the streets alone. The streets were lively, filled with people soaking up the New Year celebration atmosphere. Young couples walked arm in arm, laughing and talking. Groups of children set off firecrackers by the roadside, their pops echoing intermittently. A young couple passed by, their 3- or 4-year-old daughter riding excitedly on her father's shoulders, shouting with glee. A flicker of envy crossed Violet Sullivan's eyes. As far back as she could remember, her family had never gone out together like that. Her family wasn't harmonious, not just with the other branches of the Sullivan family, but within her own home. Her parents didn't get along. Her father was rarely home and kept mistresses on the side. Her mother, naturally, couldn't stand it, and most of their time together was filled with arguments, accusations, and curses. But in reality, her mother kept a few boy toys herself. Violet Sullivan had even seen one of them, a guy who didn't look much older than she was. Violet Sullivan also had an older brother. They'd gotten along well as children, but after he went to college, he rarely came home except for the New Year celebration, and even then, it was usually just to ask for money. He barely spoke to his younger sister. At first, she couldn't understand why two people who clearly didn't love each other stayed together. Later, she understood. Children weren't the bond. Money was. She hated the Sullivan family, her grandfather, the relatives from the other branches, her own parents, her brother. Every single one of them was an idiot. But unlike Olivia Sullivan, who tried to change her fate through her own efforts, Violet Sullivan chose to let herself go. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, but all she ever saw in her parents' eyes was displeasure and disgust. As Michael Thompson had said, almost no shops were open. On New Year's celebrations eve in a small town like Pine Ridge County, most businesses closed, prioritizing going home for the celebration over making money. Violet Sullivan didn't know where she was going. She had nowhere to go, and she definitely didn't want to go home. Although she'd initially come to this small town to see friends, she no longer felt like looking them up. With a go wherever my feet take me attitude, she wandered aimlessly all afternoon. By the time dusk began to settle, she was hungry again, having eaten only a bowl of noodles since yesterday. Looking around and seeing no open shops, She remembered Michael Thompson mentioning that a few places near the bus station stayed open through the holiday, so she headed that way. Around 5 or 6 in the evening, the streets, bustling during the day, had grown much quieter. Barely any pedestrians were visible. Everyone was busy heading home for New Year celebrations Eve dinner. Violet Sullivan reached the bus station and saw a small eatery just outside. She walked towards it. A pack of 520s, please. After paying and getting the cigarettes, she tore open the pack, pulled one out, held it between her lips, and bent her head, tried to light it with her lighter. But the lighter, perhaps out of fluid, just clicked uselessly several times without producing a flame. Just as Violet Sullivan was getting frustrated, a hand holding a lit lighter appeared beside her, offering a flame. Thanks. Violet Sullivan murmured her gratitude and started to lean in for the light. But as she looked up, she saw a familiar figure, her eyes widening as she instinctively took a few steps back. Shaw, Uncle Wilson. The burly man standing before her was indeed her grandfather's personal driver, Shaw Gibson. Uncle Wilson had 2 men behind him, holding the lighter. He stepped forward and said politely, "Miss Violet, I've been waiting for you for quite some time. Finish your cigarette, and let's head home. The banquet is about to start, and the master insists everyone be present." Violet Sullivan stared at him, stunned, her mind blank. How'd Uncle Wilson know she was here? Wait a minute. By the way, most places in town are closed for the New Year celebration. The bus station still has a few spots open if you get hungry. Michael Thompson's words suddenly echoed in her mind. Violet Sullivan instantly understood what had happened, grinding her teeth in fury. "Michael Thompson, you bastard!" Achoo. At that moment, Michael Thompson was sitting in the Thompson family living room, holding his younger cousin and watching TV, when a sudden chill made him sneeze. His younger cousin looked up at him, a hint of distaste on her cute little face. "Michael, stinky." Michael chuckled and moved to kiss her. "Michael's not stinky. Let Michael give you a kiss to prove it." His younger cousin giggled, pushing his face away. Emily Thompson, peeling an orange nearby, asked, "Catching a cold?" "Now my nose just suddenly tickled." Michael rubbed his nose, smiling. "Maybe someone's thinking about me." Emily teased, "You're Miss Olivia?" "Not necessarily. Plenty of girls are thinking about me," Michael replied with a grin. So, was Michael Thompson involved in Violet Sullivan being dragged back home? Absolutely. He hadn't wanted to get involved with that little delinquent Violet Sullivan at all. Giving her a quarter for bus fare back to Green Valley was already going above and beyond. But then it occurred to him that this situation had value. It was a chance to score points with Arthur Sullivan, the autocratic head of the Sullivan family. That's why, from the start, Michael never even considered calling Olivia Sullivan. He knew she couldn't handle this kind of thing, and calling her would only put her in an awkward position. So, he called Arthur Sullivan directly. As for the money Michael gave Violet, who would pay it back? If the kid couldn't, naturally the old man would. Although Violet might not be highly regarded in the Sullivan family, she was still Arthur Sullivan's biological granddaughter. From his interactions, Michael already knew the old man valued family ties, so his granddaughter definitely carried some weight. That was the real reason Michael helped Violet. Would Violet eventually figure it out? Would she hold a grudge against him then? Who cared? There was only one person in the entire Sullivan family he cared about. If he got hung up worrying about a rebellious teenage girl, he wouldn't be Michael Thompson. So, Michael didn't dwell on it, continuing to happily hold his younger cousin and watch TV. Christmas hadn't officially started yet, and there wasn't much worth watching on TV, but the aunts and uncles gathered around the television set, watching intently anyway, snacking on the fruit and treats from the platter on the table. The women were busy in the kitchen, while several uncles had already set up a game of mahjong, smoking and playing cards while chatting about year-end business and prospects for the coming year. Michael really enjoyed this atmosphere, the whole big family sitting together, soaking in the festive Christmas spirit. It felt really good. Normally, the Thompsons ate dinner around 5 or 6, but the Christmas turkey dinner started later, not officially beginning until 8:30 in the evening. It was expected to last several hours, at least until the Christmas gala on TV ended. And the Thompsons' Christmas dinner was a bit different from other families. While other families might have sentimental holiday music playing in the background, the Thompsons uniquely played the Happy Birthday song. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. Michael Thompson wore a slightly childish paper party hat, but he didn't mind at all, grinning foolishly instead. How many years had it been since he'd celebrated a birthday like this? Urged on by his family, he closed his eyes to make a wish. But what he expressed inwardly wasn't a wish, but words of gratitude. Thank you, God, for giving me this second chance. Before his rebirth, his life had already been smooth sailing, a standard template for success in others' eyes. But even the most successful life has regrets, big or small. In this life, he couldn't say he wouldn't have regrets again, but at least he understood what he cherished most and had the chance to make amends. The moment Michael blew out the candles also marked his passage from 17 to 18. He was an adult now. The Christmas turkey dinner lasted past 10. Robert Thompson and several of Michael's uncles were still at the table, drinking and shooting the breeze, while the younger relatives had long since gotten restless and gone outside to play with fireworks. Margaret Thompson was with Aunt Daisy and a few other aunts, sorting the yellow paper and candles they would need for church after midnight. Michael Thompson had also cleaned himself up and was ready to head out. "Mom, I'm going out," Margaret Thompson grumbled. "Where are you going on Christmas?" "Everyone's celebrating. Don't go bothering people. I made plans with Jake Wilson to watch the holiday fireworks display at City General Hospital." "Going all the way to City General Hospital? How will you get back?" "Jake Wilson's driving us back." Michael pretended to check a non-existent watch on his wrist. "Oh wow, look at the time." "Mom, I can't talk now, I really gotta go." Margaret Thompson hesitated for a moment, then just urged, "Be back early." People tend to be more lenient during the holidays. Emily Thompson had wanted to go too, but before she could speak, she caught Michael's warning glance. She understood immediately. This kid wasn't going to watch fireworks with Jake Wilson. He was obviously going to see his Olivia. A sly look flashed in Emily Thompson's eyes. She leaned back against the sofa cushions, crossed her legs, and cleared her throat. My throat's a little dry, Michael. I remember there's a smoothie shop near City General Hospital that stays open late. Right? Remember to bring one back for me." Michael shot her a glare. "Fine. I'll bring you back 10. I'd like that. And bring a creme brulee, too." Under Emily Thompson's extortion, Michael Thompson left the house. At the Sullivan residence, they were also having Christmas turkey dinner. However, aside from the dishes being more lavish than usual and the huge LCD TV in the living room showing the Christmas gala, it didn't feel much different from a regular dinner. At the table, Olivia Sullivan watched her younger cousin, Violet Sullivan, with some curiosity. She hadn't thought Violet would even be home for Christmas dinner today. Her third uncle must have dragged her back. Violet Sullivan looked like she had been crying, her eyes red-rimmed, and she kept muttering something under her breath, seemingly cursing someone. The Sullivan family's Christmas dinner didn't last long. It started around 7 and wrapped up just after 8. The Sullivan adults quickly left the house. They had many social obligations on Christmas Day and their own things to attend to. As Olivia Sullivan got up to go back to her room, Violet Sullivan suddenly came up beside her, lowered her voice, and said hatefully through gritted teeth, "You tell Michael Thompson to watch his back. This isn't over." Olivia Sullivan. ? She never expected to hear Michael Thompson's name from Violet Sullivan's lips. Just as she was about to ask, Violet Sullivan turned and stalked away, her face dark. How weird. Olivia Sullivan couldn't make heads or tails of it, and just went back to her room first. Once back in her room, Olivia Sullivan watched the Christmas gala by herself. She really enjoyed the comedy skits, and this year's performance was also very funny, making her quite happy as she watched. The room was dark, curtains drawn, with only the flickering light from the TV screen illuminating Olivia Sullivan as she sat on the edge of her bed, hugging her knees, highlighting her pretty profile. The only sound in the room came from the skit on TV, until Olivia Sullivan's phone rang. "Hello? Olivia, open your curtains. Open the window." Olivia Sullivan was a little confused, but she did as she was told, walking to the window and pulling back the curtains. The moment she pulled back the curtains, the bright flare of fireworks downstairs flooded her vision, reflecting in her wide eyes. Michael Thompson was standing on the street, just outside the Sullivans' yard. He was crouched down, head tilted, phone wedged between his shoulder and ear. With one hand, he shielded a lighter from the wind, using it to ignite a cone-shaped firework that sputtered sparks. Once the firework caught, he stood up, bathed in its light, and looked up at her by the second-floor window, grinning and waving. Olivia Sullivan stared, momentarily lost in the sight, until Michael Thompson's voice came through the phone again. "Hurry down. I think the neighborhood security guard is heading this way." That snapped her back to reality. She turned hurriedly back into the room, saying, "I'll be right down." A moment later, Olivia Sullivan slipped quietly out of the Sullivan house. Michael Thompson was busy hiding the evidence, tossing the spent firework tube into a bucket he'd brought with him. She tiptoed up behind Michael Thompson and tapped him on the shoulder. When Michael Thompson turned around, he looked her over with amusement and teased, "Are you always this pretty? Or did you dress up just because you knew I was coming?" Olivia Sullivan grinned, showing a hint of her canine teeth. That line only works the first time you use it. Michael Thompson laughed and rubbed his nose, saying sheepishly, "All right, noted. I'll think of a different opening line next time." Olivia Sullivan clasped her hands behind her back, fiddling with her fingers, and asked shyly, "What are you doing here today?" Michael Thompson lifted the bucket slightly, fulfilling a certain Olivia's New Year's wish. Olivia Sullivan felt a warmth spread through her heart. She had only mentioned it casually to Michael Thompson. She hadn't expected him to actually make it happen. But she warned him, they don't allow fireworks in the complex. Be careful, security doesn't kick you out. I know, Michael Thompson said as he walked over to a three-wheeled cart parked nearby and lifted a large styrofoam box out of the back. He carried the styrofoam box over to Olivia Sullivan. But building a snowman should be okay, right? Olivia Sullivan then saw what was inside the box. It was packed solid with snow. She was both surprised and touched. "Where did you get this?" "Actually, I found Aladdin's lamp," Michael Thompson whispered, leaning close to Olivia Sullivan's ear. "The genie asked my wish, and I said my girlfriend wanted to see snow." Olivia Sullivan blushed and lightly punched his shoulder, retorting, "I am not your girlfriend." Michael Thompson dodged sideways, grinning. Future girlfriend. Seriously, though? Didn't it snow a few days ago?" "The snow up on the mountain hasn't melted yet," he answered casually, then carried the styrofoam box towards the Sullivan house. Olivia Sullivan stood frozen. Had Michael Thompson really gone all the way up the mountain just to fulfill her wish to build a snowman on New Year's Eve? She'd only mentioned it that afternoon. Her heart swelled with emotion. Michael Thompson carried 2 large styrofoam boxes of snow to the entrance of the Sullivans' yard and dumped them out, creating a small snowdrift about waist-high. Luckily, it was particularly cold this year, with the outdoor temperature hovering around freezing all day. Insulated by the styrofoam boxes and packed tightly, the snow hadn't melted much. He rolled up his sleeves, ready to get to work, then looked back to see Olivia Sullivan still standing behind him. "What are you standing there for?" he urged. "Come on." "Oh, okay." Olivia Sullivan finally walked over and crouched beside him, starting to pack a snowball with her hands. Her cheeks slightly flushed. She tilted her head and glanced sideways at Michael Thompson. He was intently focused on packing more snow onto his own snowball, making it bigger. Suddenly, Olivia Sullivan leaned towards Michael Thompson and shoved her snowball down the back of his neck. Michael Thompson gasped from the sudden cold, a shiver running right up to his brain. "Whoa, hey, sneak attack. Not cool. You little, get back here." He haphazardly grabbed a handful of snow from the ground and scrambled up to chase her, but Olivia Sullivan had already darted away, laughing. The two chased each other playfully under the streetlights, their laughter adding a touch of warmth to the otherwise quiet street. An hour later, 2 snowmen stood by the entrance to the Sullivan house, one large and one small. The large snowman wore Michael Thompson's knit hat on its head, while the small one had Olivia Sullivan's pink scarf wrapped around its neck. The 2 snowmen leaned against each other, their twig arms reaching out, branches touching. Across the street, Michael Thompson and Olivia Sullivan sat together on a park bench. Michael Thompson had taken off his gloves and was gently rubbing Olivia Sullivan's small hands between his own, occasionally blowing warm air onto them. "Feeling better?" he asked. "Tingly," Olivia Sullivan mumbled, shifting uncomfortably. As her frozen hands warmed up, her palms felt prickly, like tiny ants crawling on them. Michael Thompson chuckled. "It's okay, that'll pass soon. Put your gloves back on." Olivia Sullivan put her gloves on. When she saw Michael Thompson stand up, she stood up too, asking hesitantly, Are we going to watch the fireworks?" She thought Michael Thompson was about to leave, and perhaps driven by a reluctance to see him go, the question slipped out unconsciously. Every New Year's Eve, Green Valley held a fireworks display by the Green River. It was always lively, but Olivia Sullivan, despite being a Green Valley native, had only gone a few times as a child and hadn't seen in years. Michael Thompson looked at her, a little surprised. Her spirits immediately fell, and she looked down. "If it's too late, never mind. I was just wondering how you knew I was planning to take you to see the fireworks," Michael Thompson said with a smile. "I haven't seen the display by City General Hospital myself yet. Let's go." Olivia Sullivan's eyes instantly lit up again. "I'll call a cab." "No need for cab, I got wheels." He pointed to the 3-wheeled cart nearby. "Hop in." Olivia Sullivan stared blankly for a long moment. Only when Michael Thompson had climbed on, put the key in, and started the engine did it finally register. "You drove this here? Never ridden in one before?" Michael Thompson honked the horn twice, sounding pleased with himself. "Come on, I'll take you for a spin." By the river embankment, Michael Thompson sat on the flood wall, while Olivia Sullivan crouched nearby, beside the railing. She held a type of handheld firework that showered colorful sparks downwards. The bucket beside her contained quite a few spent firework sticks. Michael Thompson glanced at the time and said to her, "It's almost midnight." As soon as midnight struck, the fireworks display would begin. Olivia Sullivan carefully placed the burnt-out firework stick into the bucket and walked over to sit down next to Michael Thompson. They sat side by side, he cross-legged in a relaxed sprawl, she with her knees neatly together. People around them had already started shouting the New Year's countdown. Michael Thompson joined in, but Olivia Sullivan felt too shy to yell out. Still, she was eagerly anticipating the fireworks, this time watching them with Michael Thompson. The moment the countdown hit 0, rows of fireworks across the river shot skyward with a whoosh. Points of light soared into the sky, accompanied by a bang, as brilliant fireworks exploded into starry bursts, reflecting in his eyes. Michael Thompson tilted his head back, watching the sky, the dazzling fireworks mirrored in his eyes. Olivia Sullivan was watching the fireworks too, but she was watching the ones reflected in his eyes. She watched, captivated. In that moment Michael Thompson didn't notice. It was only then she realized that, without knowing it, she had grown used to having Michael Thompson by her side. Just having him there brought a sense of security. Just like now, during a lull in the fireworks, Michael Thompson suddenly leaned closer, asking with a smile, "Olivia, any other New Year's wishes?" Olivia Sullivan's heart tightened instantly, but she breathed a sigh of relief when she saw Michael Thompson wasn't looking at her. After hesitating for a long moment, she turned, knelt on the ground, leaned towards Michael Thompson, cupped her hand to his ear, and whispered very softly, "Next year, the year after. Every year from now on, I want to celebrate New Year's with you." A new round of fireworks erupted, the whistling ascent and explosive bursts echoing over all of Green Valley, drowning out Olivia Sullivan's words. Olivia Sullivan felt a little deflated, but didn't have the courage to say it again. She started to pull back, but just then, Michael Thompson turned his head to look at her. That's something that requires persistence, you know. Hard to keep it up without some encouragement. He'd heard her. He asked softly, "Can I?" Olivia Sullivan immediately blushed, lowering her head, unable to look at him, her hands nervously fidgeting with the hem of her clothes. But finally, she gave a barely audible nod. While everyone around them was still immersed in the fireworks, heads tilted up at the sky, Michael Thompson kissed Olivia Sullivan. The fireworks show only lasted half an hour and ended quickly. Michael Thompson walked Olivia Sullivan home. She hesitated to go inside until Michael Thompson promised again that he would attend her birthday party. Only then did she reluctantly say goodbye and go into her yard. Once Olivia Sullivan was inside, Michael Thompson clenched his fists tightly, his expression excited. Another day of maxing out Olivia's affection points. Man, still a year and a half until high school graduation. It feels so long. Michael Thompson hummed a little tune, happily riding his three-wheeler, planning to head home. But perhaps fate couldn't stand seeing his good luck today, because something went wrong on the way home. It wasn't anything as dramatic as a car crash, but on the road from Green Valley back to Pine Creek Town, traffic police were stopping vehicles for drunk driving checks. It was only then that Michael Thompson learned that, unlike an electric scooter, a three-wheeler required a driver's license. That night, the suspect, Michael Thompson, implicated in driving without a license, was taken back to the station for a late-night snack by the diligent traffic police. I have deeply realized the mistake I have made and the dangers of driving without a license. Please give the state an opportunity for me to turn over a new leaf and become a new person. An officer sipping tea nearby started coughing. Ahem, it's not that serious, not that serious. Robert Thompson and Margaret Thompson rushed into the police station. Michael Thompson was reading his freshly written self-criticism essay to the officers. Robert Thompson and Margaret Thompson hurriedly apologized, paid the fine, and then retrieved both the three-wheeler and Michael Thompson. As they were leaving, the officer added, "Since it's New Year's Day and he's just a student, detention isn't necessary, but you really need to take this road safety issue seriously. It's dangerous, especially this late at night." Margaret Thompson kept apologizing profusely. Yes, this darn kid is just too bold. I'll definitely give him a good talking to when we get back. I guarantee I'll tan his hide so he can't get out of bed for 3 days. Michael Thompson immediately piped up, "Officer, maybe you should just detain me after all." The officer also offered a few words of mediation and then saw them out. Once the family finally got home, Margaret Thompson started looking everywhere for a feather duster. Robert Thompson quickly tried to restrain his wife. "Honey, let it go, let it go. What kid doesn't make mistakes?" It's fine as long as nothing serious happened. Michael Thompson kept ducking behind Robert Thompson. Mom, Dad's right. Margaret Thompson pointed the feather duster at both father and son, threatening. Robert Thompson, you get out of the way. I won't be able to rest until I teach this brat a lesson today. Didn't you say you were going to watch fireworks with the Wilsons? How did you end up taking your uncle's three-wheeler? You've really got some nerve. Your father and I are such honest people. How did we raise such a troublemaker? You're still hiding. Get over here right now. I'm counting to 3. Tell me, where were you running wild tonight? On the first day of a new year, the Thompson house was in utter chaos. The next day, because of all the commotion the night before, the entire Thompson family slept in until noon. Michael Thompson stayed in bed, lying on his stomach, rubbing his sore bottom and whimpering. Not until Emily Thompson pushed open his door, sat on the edge of his bed holding a bottle of safflower oil, and said with a grin, "My mom said you got into trouble yesterday. Did Aunt Maggie really give you a good thrashing with a feather duster? Wow, causing trouble on New Year's Day. Setting the tone for the year, huh?" Michael Thompson pulled the covers over his head, but Emily Thompson reached out to pull them back. "I brought you the safflower oil. Where does it hurt? Let me rub some on." Michael Thompson shot her a look and rubbed his backside. "Here, you gonna rub it for me?" Emily Thompson chuckled and gave his backside a firm slap. Smack. Michael Thompson yelped in pain and nearly jumped off the bed, almost ready to fight Emily Thompson. Emily Thompson tossed the safflower oil onto his bed, put her hands on her hips, and said, "You didn't even bring me the smoothie you promised yesterday. Believe it or not, I could go tell Aunt Maggie, get her to whip you again." Michael Thompson glared at her irritably, then sighed and sat up. He grabbed his jacket from the nightstand, pulled out his wallet, counted out $2 bills, and handed them to Emily Thompson. Here, go buy it yourself." Emily Thompson's expression changed instantly, becoming as attentive as a landlord's servant girl. "Thank you for your benevolence, young master. Shall I rub your backside for you?" Michael Thompson pointed towards the door. "Get lost." "Yes, sir." Emily Thompson mimicked a palace made from a period drama, gave a little curtsy, tucked the money away, and left happily. What a little money grubber. Stirred up by her antics, Michael Thompson felt more awake. He got up, dressed, planning to go downstairs, wash up, and then wait for lunch. On New Year's Day, the family didn't have much to do and just lays around at home. Even Margaret Thompson, usually diligent and unable to sit still, felt a bit idle. The house had been thoroughly cleaned before New Year's celebration, and there was no need to cook, just reheating yesterday's leftovers made for a meal, quite a plentiful one at that. Michael Thompson enjoyed a rare day of leisure, mostly sleeping. On the second day of the New Year's celebration, it was the Thompson family's day for an outing. They usually took a road trip to a nearby tourist spot, pretty much the same every year. This year, they invited the Wilson family along. The two families drove to a farmhouse inn in their old rural hometown for the day. Michael Thompson and Jake Wilson spent the day fishing with Robert Thompson, finding it less fun than carving stones in the workshop. Starting from the third day, it was time for visiting relatives, a tradition that continued with relatives coming and going until the 15th day of the lunar month. However, even for a large family like the Thompsons, visiting all the relatives still in the country usually wrapped up by the 8th day. During this period, however, something rather unexpected happened to Michael Thompson. The Thompson family called a family meeting. As mentioned before, a full family meeting always meant something significant was happening. Michael Thompson assumed it was about the mine again, but unexpectedly, the main topic of discussion at this meeting turned out to be him. The Thompson family didn't originally hail from Pine Creek town itself, but rather from Fonyang village within its borders. They still had an old, abandoned courtyard house back home. It wasn't until the 1950s, responding to the commune's call, that Michael Thompson's grandfather, the village carpenter, was recruited by the county to join the civil service system as a woodworker. That was when the whole family moved to their current residence in Pine Creek town proper. With the government subsidy policies implemented these past couple of years, the old man had even started receiving a pension. The Thompsons weren't short on money, so after some thought, the grandfather saved up his pension for the last 2 years and built a family chapel at their home. The Thompson family chapel was traditionally back in Fonyang village, but that one served the entire Yang clan of the village, not just Michael Thompson's immediate family. This new chapel, built at their house, was established because the old man wanted to revise and update the family tree specifically for his own lineage. The new chapel was constructed in the house next to Michael's, repurposing what was originally a small backyard behind that house. Now, whenever the Thompson family needed to hold a full family meeting, they gathered at the chapel, and minors weren't allowed inside. So today, when the family was suddenly notified to gather at the chapel for a meeting, Michael Thompson was a bit surprised. In his previous life's memory, the Thompson family had only held 2 such meetings during his high school years, and neither was today. It must be about the mine, Michael mused. After all, I didn't secure the mining rights in my past life. The Thompson family's fate has changed this time around, so it's normal for things to happen that didn't occur before. With that thought, Michael felt more at ease. He planned to wait for his parents to return from the meeting next door and then ask them about it. If it wasn't anything that could lead to trouble, he'd continue to stay out of it. Unexpectedly, however, as Robert Thompson was about to head next door, he glanced at Michael, who was still lounging on the sofa watching TV, and said, "Michael, you're coming too this time?" "Me too. Yeah, it's mainly about you." Michael was taken aback, then found it slightly amusing. What could possibly be about me? Though he said that, he still got up, shuffling in his slippers, ready to follow. Margaret Thompson scolded him. "Go change your shoes. And comb your hair. Look at how sloppy you are." "Mom, we're just going next door. It's all family. Is this really necessary?" "How can it be the same? It's where the ancestors reside. Are you going to see the ancestors looking like this? They'll think their dutiful descendants in your generation have all turned into beggars." After Margaret Thompson's nagging, Michael had no choice but to quickly tidy himself up. Once he looked presentable, he followed his parents next door. Inside the adjacent house, they walked through the living room, around to the side of the kitchen, where there was a small door. Pushing it open revealed the large room where the family memorials were kept. When Michael's family arrived, only his second Uncle George Thompson and eldest Uncle Benjamin Thompson were there. His aunts and his youngest uncle's family hadn't come. Michael paid his respects to the ancestors, then chose a chair and sat down, puzzled. Isn't this a full family meeting? Why isn't youngest uncle's family here? "It's fine. The main thing is that you and your parents are here," Benjamin Thompson said with a smile. George Thompson then looked at Robert Thompson. "I heard fourth brother's opinion. Although I think Michael's only been learning for such a short time, if he's really cut out for it, I don't have any objections either. Third brother, what are your thoughts?" Robert Thompson, somewhat reserved, shook his head. "Let's hear what the kid thinks first." Hold on. Michael raised his hand in protest. "I get the feeling you guys are talking about me, but I have no idea what you're talking about. Can someone please explain?" Benjamin Thompson chuckled. "It's a good thing. Don't you enjoy learning carving? Your dad, your second uncle, and I were discussing finding another teacher for you." Michael was perplexed. "Aren't I already learning from you, Uncle Benjamin?" Unexpectedly, Benjamin Thompson heard this and shook his head with a hint of helplessness. "Your progress is too fast. Learning from me is becoming a bit of a waste." Although Michael had been learning carving from him for less than 20 days in total, his progress was truly astonishing. Benjamin Thompson's main business was seal carving, focusing primarily on lettering, which was mostly what he taught Michael. But watching his nephew improve day by day during this period, in less than 20 days, Michael's skill with small seal script was already better than apprentices who had followed him for 3 or 4 years. This meant Michael was already skilled enough to take on some orders himself. And that wasn't all. In the workshop, at Michael's workstation, Benjamin had discovered a set of small pendants Michael had carved himself. He could tell they were the 12 zodiac animal heads. 8 were already completed. Each was only about the size of a thumb, yet carved with remarkable lifelikeness. The stone materials used were scraps left over from cutting in the workshop. Materials that were usually flawed, either with impurities in color or cracks, generally considered useless for significant work with little value. Yet, Michael had managed to find value in them. How many carvers possessed such an eye, even after years in the profession? The most crucial point was, Benjamin Thompson had never taught Michael how to carve animals. He had consistently taught his nephew lettering. Benjamin was also certain Michael hadn't learned it from his father, Robert Thompson, or his second uncle, George Thompson. The 3 brothers had learned from the same master, and their carving techniques all came from that one teacher, but Michael's craftsmanship clearly belonged to a different school. Which meant his nephew had figured it out himself, at most learning from a few carving books. It was only then that Benjamin Thompson realized his nephew wasn't just talented. He was practically a prodigy, a freak of nature. Benjamin immediately took this very seriously. He even felt that having his nephew continue learning under him was truly wasting this gift. He lacked the confidence to properly shape this uncut jade, still hidden within its stone skin. But when Michael heard his uncle planned to find another teacher for him, he was immediately baffled. Although Pine Creek Town was the sculpture town, provincial-level master craftsmen could be counted on one hand. His own Uncle Benjamin was already among the best. Otherwise, he wouldn't be on track to become a national master of arts and crafts in 5 or 6 years. As for current national masters, there wasn't even a handful in the entire Jiang province. Was it really necessary to find an outsider? Could it be that his second uncle George Thompson would teach him personally? Michael looked questioningly at his second uncle, but George Thompson waved his hand, clearly indicating it wouldn't be him. Michael figured as much. His second uncle spent less than half the year at home, and these were the boom years for the industry. With his uncle being so career-driven and Michael still having school, dropping out to follow his uncle around the country wasn't feasible. With that, his interest plummeted. He said tactfully, "Uncle Benjamin, maybe we should just forget it. I'll just focus on learning steadily from you." With one future national master and one provincial master in the Thompson family, having to learn from an outsider felt a bit unnecessary, even awkward. Besides, being an apprentice to a family elder wasn't the same as being apprenticed to a stranger. While it wasn't the old days where you might have to toil like a slave and endure beatings and scoldings, hardship was still unavoidable. His biggest worry was encountering an unscrupulous master who would exploit him as free labor, making him do everything while not properly teaching him any real skills. Most importantly, Michael primarily relied on his own learning system for carving. Whether he formally took a master or not didn't really affect him much. So why bother? Michael politely declined. Margaret Thompson also sided with her son. "Robert, I think we should just forget it. If Michael learns from you guys, I'm not worried. Whether he learns well or poorly, it could just be a hobby. But learning from others, let's just drop it. Besides," she continued, "my son needs to get into college someday. He can't be like you all were back then, living at someone else's place, working as a laborer, right? I mean, I'm willing to let him try things, but I can't let it interfere with his studies." She disagreed with Robert Thompson's idea, mainly worried it would jeopardize Michael's future. She had always cherished the hope that Michael could leave the small town of Pine Creek Town and build a life for himself in a big city. Honestly, Margaret Thompson wasn't even keen on Michael following in his father's footsteps, spending all year round in a tiny workshop inhaling stone dust. Every day, he'd shake more than a pound of limestone particles off his hair and clothes, and often had to haul stones weighing tens, even hundreds of pounds. Once you get older, your back, hands, and lungs easily develop problems. You only truly understand the hardship of trade when you're in it. Margaret Thompson just wanted Michael to focus on his studies. After graduation, it would be best if he could pass the civil service system exam. A stable job, sitting in an office with air conditioning, cool in summer and warm in winter, sheltered from the wind and rain. How wonderful would that be? Ideally, he'd find a wife who also had a stable job. Then the family could help them buy a house and a car. She was still healthy and strong. She could even help look after future grandchildren. Just thinking about it seemed almost too good to be true. If Michael hadn't told her that being an art student offered a specialty that could earn him extra points on the college entrance exam, she wouldn't have agreed back when he first expressed interest in learning from his father. Margaret Thompson's perspective was typical of Chinese parents, not seeking great fame or fortune for their child, just a stable, respectable life, living comfortably. So, her disagreement now was the most fervent. "Anyway, we agreed we'd listen to the child. If he doesn't agree, then I don't agree either." Robert Thompson started to get anxious. "Margaret, would I really harm my own nephew? Michael truly has talent. Don't hold the kid back." Margaret Thompson immediately flared up. "How was it holding him back? Isn't studying hard a perfectly good path? Besides, my son does so well in school. He'll have plenty of options in the future. Why should he hang everything on one shaky branch?" Seeing his younger brother and his sister-in-law about to argue, Benjamin Thompson quickly tried to smooth things over. All right, Robert means well for the boy. Doesn't Michael like this stuff? If he likes it and has talent, he should definitely put some effort into it." Margaret Thompson glared at him. "Benjamin Thompson, whose side are you on? Didn't you just say we should listen to what the child wants?" As the two sides began to argue their points, Michael suddenly remembered something he hadn't clarified. He nudged his second uncle, George Thompson, beside him with his elbow and asked curiously, "Speaking of which, I still don't even know who this master is that you were talking about finding for me." George Thompson shook his head. "Even if you learned from him, he wouldn't technically be your master." "What do you mean?" "You should call him Grandmaster. Are you planning on being in the same generation as your father?" George Thompson glanced at his nephew. "You should have heard your Grandmaster's name." Michael's curiosity intensified. "Who is it?" "Shaw Gibson." After returning home from the main house, Margaret Thompson wouldn't even look at Michael. Benjamin Thompson protested. "All right now, wipe that look off your face. Didn't we agree we'd listen to what the boy wanted?" Margaret Thompson retorted angrily. "How was I supposed to know he changes his mind every other minute? The way I see it, instead of learning some craft, we should send him to Central America to learn face-changing opera? He'd definitely have a talent for that. Michael remained silent. That was some expert-level passive aggression. But Margaret Thompson had her reasons for being so upset. Just moments before, Michael had abruptly changed his mind. And the reason for his change of heart, naturally, was hearing the name Shaw Gibson. Of course, Michael had heard the name Shaw Gibson. You could say that everyone in Pine Creek Town, even throughout Pine Ridge County, from the oldest residents to the youngest children, knew that name. He was Pine Ridge County's most celebrated figure, the only artisan in the entire Jiang province, perhaps the entire South, who could be called a national treasure-level master, the undisputed leading figure in the stone carving world today. He was so famous that his works had adorned postage stamps in earlier years. There were even rumors that one of his pieces had been selected for the first edition of banknotes, only to be replaced at the last minute when a decision was made to uniformly feature landscapes of motherland. He was also the record holder for the most gold medals at the 100 Flowers Awards, the highest honor for Chinese arts and crafts. It's worth noting that this competition wasn't limited to carving. Ceramics, paper cutting, embroidery, and numerous other crafts were included, all submitted by artisans who had dedicated decades to their fields. Standing out was incredibly difficult. Michael had never known that his father's generation had studied under this national treasure-level master. It had never been mentioned at home. The strangest part was that, in all his years growing up, he'd never seen the elders in his family visit or interact with this grandmaster during holidays or festivals. It felt as though, if this matter concerning him hadn't come up, the two families might have continued living as if the other didn't exist. Michael found fate truly peculiar. In less than half a month, he had somehow become connected with two national treasure-level masters, one from the north in the art world, and one from the south in the carving world. Although Master Huang, the art world national treasure, had only met him once to offer encouragement about his studies, this carving world national treasure was his own grandmaster, practically family. Leveraging that connection a bit in the future wouldn't be out of line. The only problem was that Michael's sudden reversal had left Margaret Thompson quite displeased. He glanced over at Benjamin Thompson, who simply shrugged, indicating he couldn't help. Michael immediately went over to Margaret Thompson, dutifully massaging her shoulders and back. "Mom, calm down, calm down. Don't say things like that. Don't you try that routine on me." Margaret Thompson irritably swatted his hand away. "Look at you. Just wait until the country allows couples to have a second child. I'm definitely having another one who won't aggravate me like this." Michael flinched. The two-child policy really was going to be implemented in a few years. Could he come home from college one year to find a new little brother or sister? He couldn't bear the thought. He immediately swore an oath. "I promise I'll prioritize my studies. I promise I won't let anything interfere with my learning. I'll get into the best art university. Besides, he might not even accept me as a student." Although Margaret Thompson had a fierce temper, she was actually quite soft-hearted. Seeing Michael swearing so sincerely and earnestly, she felt a mix of exasperation and helplessness. "Forget it," she sighed. "You're all grown up now. Your old mother can't control you anymore. But let me make this crystal clear. Your studies absolutely cannot suffer, understand? When school starts, if your grades drop in the monthly exams, nothing you say will matter. You focus squarely on your studies. Getting into college is your number one priority. Do you hear me?" Michael stood up straight and saluted. "Yes, ma'am." Margaret Thompson stood up and started walking towards the stairs, muttering to herself, "It's so strange. Didn't you boys learn your craft from Master Huang over by the old station? When did you become Master Shaw's apprentices?" Benjamin Thompson looked uncomfortable and mumbled a few evasive replies. The couple kept their voices low as they talked while heading upstairs. Michael didn't quite catch what they said and didn't dwell on it, his mind already occupied with another matter. The date to meet his grandmaster hadn't been set yet, but Olivia Sullivan's birthday party was the day after tomorrow. That family heirloom had been sitting in its box for so many days. It was time for it to finally shine in all its glory on its true owner. 2 days later. "Make absolutely sure you get here early today, understand?" Early that morning, Olivia Sullivan called Michael, reminding him repeatedly. Michael was already up, dressed in a suit, sitting on the edge of his bed with his legs crossed. He held his phone in one hand and a glass of milk in the other. He took a small sip of milk, placed the glass on the nearby nightstand, and said with a smile, "All right, I got it." After hanging up with Olivia Sullivan, Michael pulled the box out from under his bed, held it in his arms, and prepared to head downstairs and out the door. He had already told his family he was going to a classmate's birthday party today. Margaret Thompson had even given him $200 to buy a gift. As Michael carried the box downstairs, he heard voices coming from the living room while still on the stairs. "Uncle Ben Thompson, You're getting a real bargain this time. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be willing to sell it." It was the voice of a somewhat unfamiliar middle-aged man, slightly peculiar, a bit high-pitched and thin. "Were there guests over?" Michael glanced curiously towards the living room and saw a tall, thin middle-aged man sitting across from Robert Thompson. The man had high cheekbones, sunken cheeks, and was slightly balding. On the coffee table, a green box lay open, revealing an item nestled in a foam cushion inside. Michael was a bit puzzled. The New Year's celebration holiday wasn't even over yet, and there was already business? From the sound of it, it seemed like his own father was planning to buy something from someone else. That was quite rare. The Thompson family usually bought rough stones that had already been windowed, or they went straight to auctions at other mines for raw or fresh from the ground, still uncut. They almost never bought finished products from others. But Michael didn't dwell on it. After all, every family had different sales channels. Occasionally spotting someone else's finished piece, thinking they could sell it for a better price, and buying it as a potential bargain was perfectly normal. He had no intention of interfering with the family business and continued downstairs, holding the box. Out of politeness, as he passed through the living room, he greeted the unfamiliar guest courteously. "Hello, Uncle." The skinny middle-aged man squinted at Michael, smiling. "Look how big you've gotten. I remember seeing you back when your dad worked over by the station. Uncle Ben Thompson, don't you worry about a thing concerning your son." Robert Thompson just smiled and looked at the item on the table. The skinny man said bluntly, "Stop looking. Someone offered $400,000 for this piece before. Now you can have it for $260,000. Take it or leave it. I'm just desperate for cash, otherwise I wouldn't let you get such a bargain." Robert Thompson smiled and said, "Let me take another look. Michael, bring me my loupe." Michael acknowledged and went upstairs to get it for him. When he returned with it, Robert Thompson put on the loupe. It was essentially a magnifying glass, but unlike a handheld one, this type could be worn, usually over one eye. Robert Thompson leaned over, meticulously examining the item the skinny man had brought. It was also a chicken bloodstone piece, with clean blood color and good coverage. It was already carved into a finished product, a depiction of the Hans Han Temple, and had been waxed. The carving wasn't bad, but the only flaw was that the waxing job wasn't very professional. The wax layer was too thick in some places, causing yellowing. If someone had really offered $400,000, then $260,000 wasn't expensive at all. It was practically a steal. Although Robert Thompson wasn't as naturally gifted as his two brothers, he had been in the business for many years and had a decent eye. He quickly felt tempted. He could roughly guess why the man beside him was so desperate to sell. Probably saddled with gambling debts and needing cash fast. The only problem was that the Thompson family was currently setting up operations at the mine, and almost all their ready cash was tied up in it. Robert Thompson hesitated, wondering whether he should ask the families of his eldest and fifth brothers to contribute more money from the mine so he could free up funds to buy this piece. Just as he was carefully inspecting the finished piece, weighing the pros and cons in his mind, Michael, standing nearby with nothing better to do, also took a closer look. When Robert Thompson carefully lifted the piece out of the box to examine it, Michael's brow gradually furrowed. This finished chicken bloodstone carving seemed a bit thin, only about 2 inches thick. Moreover, the thickness wasn't uniform. Although during carving, some parts might be chiseled away to incorporate the chicken blood patterns into the design effectively. Judging by the blood veins and stone layers on the surface of this carving, that didn't seem to be the reason. Just to be sure, Michael activated his system skill. Appraise. An almost imperceptible light flashed in his eyes as he stared at the item. Detailed information about the item quickly became clear to him. After a moment, Michael looked away, closed his eyes, and rubbed his temples with his fingers. When he opened his eyes again, he walked straight over, picked up the carving that had been placed back in the box, held it directly in his hand, and used his thumbnail to scrape at the deliberately thickened wax coating. After scraping for a bit and revealing a tiny crack hidden underneath, Michael nodded. Just as I thought. The skinny middle-aged man standing nearby immediately became anxious. "Uncle Ben Thompson, what's wrong with your kid? Be careful. That's a piece worth hundreds of thousands. Doesn't he have any manners? If it gets chipped or damaged, you'll have to pay for it." As he yelled, Robert Thompson's expression immediately showed displeasure. Although Michael's action was indeed a bit rude, this was the Thompson household. "Who are you to yell at my son?" Just as the skinny man was about to stand up and approach Michael, Michael smiled, placed the chicken blood carving back on the table, and pushed the man's shoulder, making him sit down again. "Uncle, I'm just trying to learn. Don't be angry. By the way, I didn't catch your name." The middle-aged man took a deep breath and replied curtly, "The name's Shaw." "Oh, Uncle Shaw, where did you get this piece?" Michael's polite words seemed to slightly appease Shaw Gibson, but he still replied irritably, "What do you mean, get it? I bought the stone at the mine myself, cut it myself, and carved it myself." Michael's eyes widened, as if in great surprise. "This craftsmanship. You really carved this yourself, mister?" Shaw seemed quite pleased by these flattering words. If not me, who? Your dad. Don't even mention your dad. Even your uncle back in the day couldn't compare to me. So it really was you? Then there's no mistake." Michael, who had been smiling politely just moments before, suddenly his expression changed completely. His face turned cold in an instant. He stood up and swung his hand, landing a hard slap across the man's face. Smack! Michael's eyebrows shot up, his brow furrowed fiercely as he yelled. "And here I was worried I might hit the wrong guy, trying to swindle my family, right in our own house, huh? Ouch." Shaw Gibson yelped as the slap sent him staggering sideways onto the couch. Michael Thompson hadn't held back at all. Within moments, one side of Shaw Gibson's face was swelling badly. His mind reeled. Who would have expected the young man, who just moments ago was looking up at him with an admiring smile, to suddenly lash out? It wasn't just Shaw Gibson who was stunned. Michael's own father, Robert Thompson, watching from the side, was equally blindsided. Robert Thompson was baffled. His son had always been good-natured. Sure, his mother had chased him around the house with a feather duster countless times growing up, but Michael had never even argued with his parents, let alone hit someone right in front of him. And hitting a guest in their own home, no less. This was, clutching his swelling cheek, Shaw Gibson finally snapped back to reality, his voice turning shrill. "You little punk. You dare hit me? I'll fight you." He scrambled up, flailing wildly as he lunged at Michael, looking like he was about to scratch his face. Michael didn't give him an inch. As Shaw Gibson rose, Michael kicked him square in the chest, snapping, "Fighting like a girl? Don't you know I make a living with this face?" Shaw Gibson felt the air knocked out of him, almost passing out. His eyes reddened with fury. He looked ready to tear Michael apart. Robert Thompson couldn't just stand by. He quickly stepped between them. Shaw, calm down. Michael, what is wrong with you?" The commotion reached the kitchen, where Margaret Thompson was cutting fruit. She hurried out, asking, "What's going on? What's happening?" Seeing the uproar in the living room, she immediately jumped to the conclusion that her son was the victim, regardless of the details. She flew into a rage. "George Thompson, what kind of person did you bring home? Are you just going to stand there and watch your nephew get hit?" Hearing Margaret's irrational accusations, Robert Thompson couldn't even manage a wry smile. "Don't assume Michael's the one getting beat just because he's rubbing his hand. He hit the guy so hard his own hand went numb. He's got some serious strength. Takes after me." Margaret wasn't listening. She immediately stormed out, wailing dramatically to rally support. "Help! Isn't anyone home? Michael's being attacked by an outsider in his own house. Isn't anyone going to stop this?" Her voice carried. She had powerful lungs. Soon, sounds of people hurrying downstairs came from upstairs and the neighboring houses. It was still the New Year holiday, and the Thompson family businesses hadn't reopened yet, so everyone was at home relaxing. Hearing that their nephew was being assaulted by an outsider in his own home? Unacceptable. A crowd rushed down, grabbing makeshift weapons as they came. "Margaret, what's going on? Where's Michael? Is he hurt badly? Where's the attacker? Don't let him get away. Someone call the police." In no time, a throng of aunts and uncles filled the living room. Seeing the crowd, Shaw Gibson swallowed hard but tried to put on a brave face. "What is this? Ganging up on me because you have more people? Fine. Call the police. Call them right now. Let's see who they arrest when they get here." Seeing someone actually pull out their phone, Robert Thompson panicked. "Wait, don't call the police. Not yet." He turned to Michael, who was standing calmly to the side, and whispered urgently, "Michael, what really happened?" "Dad, you're asking me what happened? Why don't you ask Shaw Gibson what kind of junk he was trying to sell you?" At Michael's words, Shaw Gibson, who had still been struggling in Robert Thompson's grip, trying to get at Michael, suddenly went still. He glanced at Michael, a flicker of fear and uncertainty in his eyes. Did this kid figure it out? Impossible. He's so young. Even an old hand like Robert Thompson, with decades of experience, didn't spot it. How could he? Shaw Gibson forced himself to speak, trying to sound indignant. "What about my piece? Is there a problem? What would a kid like you know? I was doing your dad a favor, offering him a good deal, and this is how I'm repaid? Getting beaten up for no reason." He glanced at the surrounding Thompsons, then turned angrily to Robert. "Robert, forget it. I'm not selling this piece anymore. But this isn't over." With that, he reached for the item on the coffee table to put it back in its box. Michael slammed his hand down on Shaw's. "Going nowhere," he said with a menacing grin. "You're right, this isn't over." Michael reached for the box. Shaw Gibson, clearly hiding something, tried to snatch it away, but Michael grabbed his index finger and bent it sharply backward. Shaw cried out, doubling over, nearly forced to his knees. Michael easily took the agate stone carving from the box. He examined it for a moment, then suddenly lifted it high above his head and smashed it violently onto the floor. Crash! The agate carving shattered into pieces on impact. Everyone stared, dumbfounded. Robert Thompson was utterly speechless. Michael was his son. He'd smashed the piece, which meant Robert would have to pay for it. $260,000. Money didn't grow on trees. He'd always known his kid was bold. But today, Robert Thompson realized he had truly underestimated the little rascal. Smashing $260,000 just to hear the sound? That wasn't just reckless spending, it was insane. Robert Thompson's head throbbed. He was already trying to figure out how to clean up Michael's mess. The deal was dead, obviously, and now they had a serious enemy. But Robert failed to notice that after Michael smashed the carving, Gibson, who had been shouting moments before, had suddenly gone deathly silent. He didn't even mention compensation. In fact, beads of cold sweat were forming on his forehead. Michael walked right up to Gibson and asked with a grin, "Do I need to pay for that?" Gibson stammered, unable to meet Michael's gaze. Michael pulled out his wallet, counted out 1,000 yuan, and tossed the bills in Gibson's face. The money slapped against his cheek, but Shaw didn't dare make a sound. "Is that enough?" Michael asked. Shaw's face turned uglier, humiliated that an old fox like him had been tripped up and disgraced by someone so young. Just then, George Thompson bent down and picked up a fragment of the shattered agate. His expression changed as he examined it. He murmured something to Benjamin Thompson beside him. After Benjamin Thompson looked and nodded, George turned to Robert Thompson, his face grim. "Robert, how much did he want for this piece?" $260,000. Michael answered before Robert could, clicking his tongue. "That's a pretty hefty sum for fraud. How many years do you think that warrants?" Robert Thompson looked confused. Benjamin, I examined it. There was nothing wrong with the piece." "Look again," George said, handing the fragment to Robert. Robert took it and looked at the surface, still seeing nothing amiss. But when he turned the fragment on its side and examined the cross-section, his eyes widened. George pointed out, "This piece was glued together from fragments. Worth $260,000, you think?" Robert Thompson's face darkened. He rubbed the fragment hard between his fingers, silent. With the trick exposed, Gibson's face turned ashen. Seeing that his second uncle had exposed the trick behind the piece, Michael Thompson didn't bother looking at Gibson's reaction anymore. He turned to Margaret Thompson and said, "Mom, call the police. Let them handle it. We should get ready to file a lawsuit, if necessary." Margaret Thompson was still confused about what had happened, but hearing her son, she quickly agreed and got up to use the living room phone to call the police. However, Margaret was stopped halfway by George Thompson. He waved his hand dismissively and then said to Gibson, "All these years, and you're still the same damn jerk. About today, our family won't hold it against you. Don't ever set foot in the Thompson house again. Get out." Michael was quite surprised and turned to look at his father. "Dad." Robert Thompson, however, shook his head and whispered, "Listen to your second uncle." Michael had no choice but to step aside. Gibson wanted to pick up the money scattered on the floor, but after Michael glared at him, he could only slink away dejectedly. After the uninvited guest left the Thompson residence, George Thompson, looking stern, called Michael's father and several uncles outside. Inside, Margaret Thompson was cleaning up the broken stone fragments in the living room. While sweeping, she didn't forget to nag Michael. "You brat, you've really got some nerve now, hitting someone right in front of the whole family. What if you seriously hurt him? What if he calls the police and you get a mark on your record? How will you get into college? How will you find a job? So impressive, huh?" Throwing money in his face. Margaret Thompson was the kind of mother who would unconditionally defend her child in front of outsiders, even if it meant people thought she was a shrew. Even if Michael broke the law, she would be the type to cover for him unconditionally. Of course, that wasn't right, and Michael wouldn't do anything illegal, but such was Margaret Thompson's love for her son. But once the matter was over, behind closed doors, she wouldn't hold back when lecturing her son. Michael retorted unhappily, "Mom, I saved our family $260,000. If I hadn't noticed today, Dad would have been completely ripped off. This guy came into our house pulling this crap, and you expected me to be nice to him." Normally, if Michael talked back like this, Margaret Thompson would have grabbed the feather duster. But this time, she secretly felt her son had done the right thing, and it was immensely satisfying, though she couldn't say it out loud, lest she encourage her little rascal's arrogance. "Hitting someone is still wrong. Don't do it again, understand?" Margaret Thompson said sternly. then picked up the dustpan filled with debris and headed towards the kitchen. "Come back early tonight. Your second uncle sent over an old hen. I'll make soup for you." Michael knew, however, that the old hen his second uncle sent laid 2 free-range eggs a day, and his mother treasured it greatly. Killing it today to make soup was her way of rewarding him, even though she wouldn't admit it. Such a proud old dear. Having finished lecturing Michael, Margaret Thompson turned her dissatisfaction toward her husband. That Robert Thompson, decades of learning completely wasted. How could he still fall for a scam? He's not even as sharp as his own son, who's only been learning for a few months. Your dad's pig-headed. Michael listened with amusement as his mother badmouthed his father, offering a defense for him. It's not Dad's fault. And indeed, it wasn't Robert Thompson's fault. The technique of stone patching was virtually unknown in the market in early 2009. Stone patching involved gluing several pieces of material together. This was done to repurpose scrap material, high-quality stone that couldn't be used due to cutting issues, having only a small blood surface after being cut, or other reasons. Later on, this would evolve into a new technique in stone carving craftsmanship. And at that time, the price of good quality scrap material unusable for standalone pieces would skyrocket. But that was in the future. Right now, this stone patching technique wasn't widespread, and agate stone scrap unsuitable for carving into display pieces was still just worthless scrap. Like the finished piece Shaw Gibson brought today, if it were 2012, it might be worth 30 or 40,000 yuan. By 2016, maybe over 100,000. But now, in 2009, it was worth little more than the labor cost. Moreover, the craftsmanship was crude, requiring thick wax to hide the cracks. On top of that, Shaw Gibson was selling it as a piece carved from a single, raw stone, which was clear-cut fraud. Given the amount of money involved, if they actually sued him, getting him locked up for a few years wouldn't be difficult. Michael hadn't expected a technique that would only appear years later to show up now. It was perfectly normal for Robert Thompson to be fooled. After all, the agate patterns on the piece looked entirely real, not dyed. Because they were real. If Robert Thompson had actually bought it, the money would have truly gone down the drain. In Pine Creek Town, unless payment was made in installments with an IOU, people rarely drew up written contract for transactions. It was always cash for goods, settling things on the spot. After all, everyone did business in the same small place, neighbors for 10 or 20 years, seeing each other constantly. Regarding today's incident, Michael hadn't initially planned to let it slide. He wasn't some pushover. With scumbags like Shaw Gibson, he believed in crushing them if possible. He suddenly thought of something, and his expression changed. Wait, his surname is Shaw. Shaw Gibson. Dad called him senior apprentice brother. In Pine Creek Town, surnames like Liu, Lin, and Zhang are common. Shaw isn't common at all. It's surely not. While Michael and Margaret Thompson were talking inside the house, outside in the courtyard, Robert Thompson and his brothers were also talking. George Thompson said gravely, "Michael hit that old dog today." Benjamin Thompson said angrily, "Didn't he deserve it? That old dog just keeps targeting our Thompson family, doesn't he? If it weren't for him back then." "Let the past be the past. This is about Michael now," George Thompson interjected, not wanting to bring up old history. "For Michael's sake, what's wrong with humbling ourselves a bit? We all agreed to keep what happened back then buried, didn't we? That old dog knows we need something from him now. Otherwise, would he pull something like this? If you ask me, Michael should just stay home and learn from us. What good could possibly come from going to Shaw Gibson's?" Robert Thompson looked dejected, squatting on a stone stool, puffing away on a cigarette. George Thompson said, "The master is the master. Shaw Gibson the old dog is Shaw Gibson the old dog. What kind of master is he? He treats his apprentices like outsiders. Only his own son matters to him." Benjamin Thompson seemed to hold a particularly deep grudge against the Shaw Gibson family, speaking bluntly. Among those present, he was the only one not in the carving trade, so the source of his resentment was unclear. However, his words suggested that the Thompson brothers had indeed had unpleasant experiences when they were apprenticed under Shaw Gibson's master. If it weren't for Michael's situation, they likely would have never interacted again. As the eldest brother, George Thompson made the final decision. Regardless, the first of next month is the master's 70th birthday. The gift list must be sent over. Whether they accept it or not is another matter. The others reluctantly agreed. After settling that matter, George Thompson suddenly remembered, speaking of which, how did Michael figure out there was something wrong with that piece? Even Robert didn't see it. George Thompson couldn't wrap his head around it. He went inside and pulled Michael Thompson aside to ask him about it again. Michael Thompson's mind was on his arrangement with Olivia Sullivan. How much time had that business with Shaw Gibson already cost him? He wasn't in the mood to explain something like this right now. Besides, it was impossible to explain. Don't ask. The only answer was genius intuition. Michael Thompson headed out quickly. He'd already told his parents he was going into the city for a classmate's birthday, so they didn't object. His father, Robert Thompson, even drove him there personally. When they got to Green Valley, Robert Thompson took out his wallet, counted out a few bills, and asked, "Is this classmate a boy or a girl?" "What kind of question is that, Dad?" Michael Thompson corrected him, looking serious. "Would I really come all the way into the city for some guy? Of course it's a girl." Robert Thompson looked up, thought for a second, and pulled out a few more bills. "In that case, take some extra. Get her a nicer gift." Giving extra just because it was a girl. His dad definitely knew how to play favorites. "Thanks, Dad." Michael Thompson took the money happily. He was a bit surprised by the amount. His dad had actually given him $2,000 all at once. "Dad, what is this? A down payment on a bride price? We're still way short for the real thing." "What are you talking about, bride price? You haven't even finished high school. Get your head out of the clouds." "Then why so much? Is it really just for a gift?" "Keep the extra. Consider it a reward," Robert Thompson said cheerfully. "That slap today was impressive. Reminded me of myself back in the day." Unlike Margaret Thompson, he didn't always put on airs as the parent around Michael. Sometimes their relationship felt like both father and son and friends. After all, this was a dad who'd encourage his high school son to get a girlfriend and even offer an allowance for dating. Michael played along, buttering him up. Well, like father, like son, right? "Anyway, gotta go. I set a time to meet my friend, and I'm already late." "Okay, go on." After getting out of the car, Michael Thompson stood on the street, holding the box with the gift. He wondered how Robert Thompson would react if he knew the $2,000 he'd just given didn't even cover a fraction of the cost of the gift his son had prepared for the girl. Packed inside that plain-looking box was a custom gown that had cost $150,000 to $160,000 to make. Michael casually tucked the box under his arm, looked around the street for a moment, then pulled out his phone to check the map. He'd been dropped off in the southern part of the city, but it wasn't near the exclusive neighborhood where the Sullivan family lived. There was still a fair distance to cover. Before heading to the Sullivans, he had arranged to meet someone else first. Red Shore Coffee. Over here. Michael finally found a meeting spot. As soon as he walked into the coffee shop, someone waved him over. "Michael. Michael Thompson, over here." Meanwhile, at the Sullivan residence, Olivia Sullivan sat in her room at her vanity, a professional applying her makeup. Her birthday party this year wasn't as large as the previous one, but last year had been her 18th birthday, a coming-of-age celebration. This year was just a regular birthday. She didn't usually wear makeup at school. Chinese high schools were quite strict about that sort of thing. Everyone went fresh-faced, looking perfectly innocent. But today, many guests important to the Sullivan family would be attending. As the evening's guest of honor, she needed to look her best, so she was having some light makeup applied. Olivia Sullivan was quite happy about it. What girl doesn't enjoy getting dressed up and looking beautiful, especially when there's someone she likes? Once her makeup was finished, she changed into a stylish little dress. Twirling in front of the mirror, she admired her more polished appearance, thinking with a mix of shyness and excitement, he's going to be so surprised today. Just as she was considering a different hairstyle or choosing a small hair accessory, a knock sounded at the door. The sudden knock startled Olivia. Before she could even ask who was there, the door swung open. She hadn't locked it. Standing there was her older brother, Ethan Sullivan. Ethan Sullivan saw his sister looking at him, clearly displeased. He pointed back at the door. "I did knock, but I didn't say you could come in." The siblings did not have a good relationship. Ethan especially resented Olivia because she hadn't defended him the last time their grandfather, Arthur Sullivan, had punished him. But within the Sullivan family, Arthur protected his granddaughter, leaving Ethan powerless. Olivia's parents weren't exactly bad to her. Her father was constantly preoccupied with business and paid little attention to his children. Her mother, at least, had never physically abused or verbally attacked her. Compared to a typical family, they simply weren't very close. Otherwise, things were relatively normal. However, Olivia could always sense that her parents favored her brother. Especially after the incident with Ethan, her mother had grown even colder towards her because Olivia hadn't defended her brother to their grandfather. Living under the same roof, mother and daughter rarely spoke privately, perhaps exchanging only a few words a month outside of mealtimes. And when Ethan had cornered her at the campus plaza demanding money, even threatening to hit her, her parents had found out but chose to ignore it. Olivia didn't like her brother, and the feeling was mutual. Ethan disliked his younger sister just as much. Perhaps the reason for his dislike was that, as the man and the older sibling, he couldn't stand seeing his sister become increasingly successful and favored by their grandfather. the head of the family. Meanwhile, he, the eldest grandson, was dismissed by others as a hopeless case, useless mud that couldn't be built into a wall. Even his own grandfather couldn't hide the disappointment and reproach in his eyes when he looked at Ethan. What was her problem? She was just a girl. Shouldn't she just plan on getting married quietly in the future? Did she actually think she could become the head of the family and inherit everything? Today, however, Ethan forced a friendly smile and spoke politely. He had no choice. Today, he needed something from her. Since the last incident, his grandfather was dead set on shipping his hopeless grandson abroad. The visa was nearly processed. All that remained was a plane ticket at the end of the month to send him off to some miserable coffee plantation in a place like Myanmar, Laos, or Cambodia. How could Ethan not be panicking? He was practically frantic. If he got sent abroad, God knows when, or if, he'd ever come back. And it wasn't like he was being sent to France, England, or the U.S., places where he could at least have some fun. No, it was to some miserable little country like Myanmar, Laos, or Cambodia. They were really sending him away to suffer. His only hope now to change their grandfather's mind and stay in the country was his little sister. He'd do anything, even grovel, if it meant he didn't have to leave the country. Hey sis, happy birthday. Ethan did his best impression of a doting older brother, smiling as he spoke. All these years, I haven't really given you any decent presents. Consider this making up for it, plus a New Year's gift. He held out a gift box to Olivia. Look at this little dress you're wearing. Probably just some cheap thing worth a few thousand, right? I had a friend bring back a gown from France, designed and handmade by a top designer. Put on, you'll look absolutely stunning. You're going to love it. Olivia nervously clutched the hem of her skirt and backed away slightly. Steeling herself, she said, I don't have any money. She assumed this sudden, fawning behavior meant Ethan was about to hit her up for money again. I just need you to do me a favor. Ethan Sullivan put the gift box down and said to Olivia Sullivan, Grandpa dotes on you, doesn't he? Help me talk to him. I don't want to go abroad. Olivia Sullivan hesitated. Ethan Sullivan going abroad would be a good thing, not just for her, but for the entire Sullivan family. Because of Ethan, the family had cleaned up his messes countless times. Just last month, some pregnant girl had shown up at the house demanding Ethan take responsibility. No one knew exactly how it was resolved in the end, but it certainly took a lot of effort. Seeing Olivia hesitate without saying anything, Ethan grew anxious. He irritably scratched his head, then turned back, pointing at her. Look, I'm asking you nicely right now. Why don't you just agree? Don't push me. Olivia Sullivan was usually mild-mannered, but even she was angered by Ethan's disrespectful attitude. What are you going to do? As the siblings argued, the others in the room didn't dare intervene. They exchanged glances before quietly leaving the room. Veins pulsed on Ethan's forehead as he pointed fiercely at Olivia. Fine. Grandpa protects you here at home, so I wouldn't dare touch you. But nobody's protecting that Thompson kid. Damn it. The son of some countryside stonemason almost had me fooled. I still haven't settled the score with him for that. Just mentioning it made Ethan furious, his eyes practically turning red. He'd been beaten up by Michael Thompson earlier at the school plaza, but the kid was unervingly good at bluffing. Ethan didn't know where Michael had heard it, but he'd brought up Ethan stealing the family heirloom and the whole loan shark business, effectively scaring him into an action. Not only had he been beaten up, but he'd also been shaken down for $300. His own father had never hit him that hard his entire life. He'd never been humiliated like that before. Ethan Sullivan might be a spoiled brat, but he wasn't completely stupid. He had someone look into Michael Thompson's background, and only then did he discover that Michael was just the son of a stonemason. Sure, the Thompson family might be somewhat known in Pine Ridge County, but how could they possibly compare to the Sullivans? One was the Sullivan family, with assets in the billions and business operations in hundreds of countries worldwide. The other was, at best, some small-time country rich guy. Although Ethan didn't know how Michael Thompson had found out about his affairs, he figured Michael must have just heard it from someone. After all, Ethan's own low-life friends knew about him secretly selling the family heirloom and owing money to loan sharks. And even Ethan knew those guys couldn't keep their mouths shut. Discovering Michael Thompson's real background nearly gave Ethan an aneurysm. The whole incident had been festering like a thorn in his side, and he was constantly looking for a chance to get revenge. But he'd been grounded at home by Arthur Sullivan, his bank cards and credit cards frozen, leaving him unable to cause trouble for Michael Thompson, even if he wanted to. And now, he was using this to threaten Olivia Sullivan. It would have been one thing if he hadn't threatened her, but hearing this, Olivia's eyes immediately flashed with anger. She slammed her hand on the table, her voice rising almost to a shriek. Ethan Sullivan. Ethan smirked. What's wrong? Scared now? You really value that classmate of yours, don't you? Planning to marry him into the Sullivan family? Olivia clenched her teeth. If you lay a finger on Michael Thompson, I'll tell Grandpa. Michael Thompson saved Grandpa's life. I won't do it myself. I'll hire someone. Who's going to know it was me? Ethan brushed off Olivia's threat. Besides, I'm leaving the country soon anyway. What do I care? Olivia bit her lip hard, staring fixedly at Ethan, tears welling in her eyes. But Ethan only grew more animated. That Michael Thompson is in the art studio program, isn't he? Grandpa even introduced him to Mr. Huang. Said he was really talented. What happens if that hand gets broken? Can he still paint then? And it's not just Michael Thompson. You have that good friend, Clare Evans, right? I know all about her. Tell me, if Claire were to show up pregnant next semester, could she still go to school? Ethan had truly dropped all pretense now, threatening his own sister like the lowest kind of thug. Olivia truly panicked, because knowing Ethan's character, he was absolutely capable of doing something like this. Besides, even if he did it, what could anyone really do to him? The other branch families might seize on it, but her parents would undoubtedly protect their son fiercely. Even Grandpa might hush it up to protect the family honor. Arthur Sullivan greatly admired Michael Thompson and despised his grandson Ethan. But Ethan was still his grandson, his own flesh and blood. Even Olivia wasn't confident about what her grandfather would ultimately do. Having made his threats, Ethan softened his tone. Look, I'm not asking for anything outrageous. Just put in a good word for me with Grandpa. As long as he lets me stay in the country, I swear I won't touch a hair on Michael Thompson's head. Though extremely reluctant, Olivia had no choice but to yield. But when Grandpa really decides something, even I can't change his mind. Ethan waved a dismissive hand, speaking recklessly. I don't care about that. If Grandpa hasn't changed his mind by the end of the month and still insists I go abroad, then something will happen to Michael Thompson. I'm telling you now. After saying his piece, he didn't even glance at Olivia's face. Leaving the gift box behind, he stood up, turned, and walked out. Olivia sat there stunned for a long time. She didn't know how much time had passed before the door opened, and a cheerful voice called out from the hallway. Olivia, I'm here. Clare Evans entered, holding an unremarkable-looking box, and said gleefully, Look what I brought for you. Her voice trailed off as she saw Olivia hiding her face, crying. Clare froze for a second, then rushed over. Olivia, what's wrong? Who upset you? Seeing Clare, Olivia couldn't hold back her tears any longer and hugged her friend, crying miserably. Clare! Hey, calm down. Who did this to you? Was it that jerk Michael Thompson? I swear I'll call him right now and give him a piece of my mind. Clare flusteredly tried to comfort her best friend. But no matter how much she asked, Olivia wouldn't say what was wrong, just kept crying. Half an hour earlier, the person meeting Michael Thompson at the coffee shop was none other than Clare Evans. Seeing Michael Thompson walk towards her, Claire smiled. Looking sharp, she glanced behind him, and seeing no one else, casually asked while holding her drink, Just you? What? Disappointed Jake Wilson didn't come? Michael teased with a smile, earning him a light, embarrassed punch from Claire, who muttered, What nonsense are you talking about? He sat down across from Claire and casually placed the unremarkable box he was holding onto the table. Claire looked at the box he'd put down and asked curiously, What's this? A birthday present for our classmate Olivia. Michael pushed the box towards her. Could you do me a favor and give it to her for me?